In this ninja world, I'm the one in charge now. Uzumaki Naraku. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. Mission accomplished. Helpless Kakashi. In the history of the ninja world, ever since Senju Hashirama distributed the major tailed beasts to various ninja villages, the tailed beasts have become war machines. If Senju Hashirama was still alive, he might regret his decision point. Although the sealed tailed beasts look miserable, the saddest one is the Jinchuriki. Just like today's Sunagakure village, the fourth Kazekage directly sacrificed his son Gaara for the benefit of the village, and made him a Jinchuriki. This is how his tragic childhood began. Thinking of this, a bitter smile appeared on Naraku's lips. Although Gaara's fate had nothing to do with him, Naruto and Kushina were both Jinchuriki now. Kushina was a little better. After all, she had already experienced some things that needed to be experienced, but Naruto was different point. Although because of his relationship, Naruto is no longer able to provide basic food and clothing like in the original novel, some things have still not changed. Like the original work, with the tacit approval of the third generation, Naruto's identity as a Jinchuriki was still exposed. Since then, the attitude of the people in the village towards Naruto has become extremely bad. Even the Sarutobi clan only took care of Naruto under the pressure of the third generation. Even so, they didn't treat Naruto well. Naraku had already discovered this when he visited Naruto recently. Strength, we still need to hurry up and improve our strength. Naraku felt a pressure in his heart. When Kushina wakes up, she must recognize Naruto, but Konoha's top brass will not agree easily. After entering the Kingdom of Wind, the caravan only took half a day to reach its destination. Naraku and Shizu then spent the night here with the caravan. After the caravan's goods transaction was completed the next day, they returned again. 3 days later, they returned to the place where the caravan started. Here their mission was considered over after bidding farewell to Nakata-jun and the others. Naraku and the others got up and returned to Konoha. And Jun Nakata may have felt guilty or something else, so he gave him double the reward for this mission. However, Naraku and Shizu don't really care about this. For them, money doesn't play a big role, at least for now. But although they don't care, the third generation as Hokage is different. Hokage's office. The mission was well accomplished. Shizu, Naraku. After reading the scroll in his hand, a smile appeared on the third generation's face. The reward for A-level tasks is not low, and now it has doubled, which is still very useful for Konoha now. Thank you for your hard work. Naraku, please go down and rest. Sandai spoke again. Naraku nodded upon hearing this. Okay, Hokage-sama. Then he turned around and left here. As for why the third generation left Shizu behind, Naraku could also guess something. It was nothing more than reporting his intelligence. Oh, you already have the strength of a special Jounin now. Naraku's guess was correct. Shizu reported Naraku's every move during this mission to the third generation. After hearing that Naraku already possessed special Jounin strength, the third generation showed a surprised expression. The talent of a 7-year-old Jounin is simply astonishing. Even Konoha's most famous genius, Kakashi Hatake, only became a Jounin at the age of 12. After the shock, Sandai fell silent. After extending his hand to signal Shizu to retreat, the entire office fell silent. Naraku Uzumaki is the younger brother of the fourth Hokage. Normally, with such a status, he must be loyal to Konoha. I just don't know why, but Sandai feels a little uneasy in his heart. Minato, Kushina, the third generation murmured. Boom. Boom. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Sandai collected his thoughts and then said, "Come in." Squeak. Wearing a black mask and dazzling silver hair, the person coming was none other than Kakashi, who had just completed his mission and came back to life. Hokage-sama. Kakashi knelt down on one knee, lowered his head, and said in a respectful tone, "Anbu is a subordinate unit managed by the Hokage. Every Anbu member needs to salute when seeing the Hokage. It's Kakashi. The mission has been completed," the third generation said in a gentle tone, while raising his hand to signal Kakashi to get up. Kakashi nodded, stood up and handed the Sandai a scroll. Okay, thank you for your hard work, Kakashi. The third generation reached out and took the scroll and then continued to say, originally, you have just completed the mission and should be allowed to take a good rest for a few days. But you also know that the village is currently short of manpower, so there is a mission here that may have to work hard for you again. Kakashi did not express any dissatisfaction when he heard this. He has experienced too many such things and has long been used to it. Continuous missions are like a common occurrence for him. Although he was a little helpless, he also knew that there was nothing he could do. There were indeed not many talents available in Konoha today. Then Sunday took a scroll from the table and handed it to Kakashi. This is an A-level mission. Have a rest tonight and set off tomorrow. Yes, Kakashi nodded and then turned around and left. Wait a minute. At this moment, Sunday spoke again. Naraku has joined Anbu. You can take him with you on this mission. Naraku, he has joined Anbu. Kakashi was a little surprised, but then he figured it out. If there is anyone in Konoha who knows Naraku's true strength best, besides Naraku himself, it is him. With Naraku's strength almost infinitely close to his own, it would indeed be inappropriate to go to the ninja academy. Okay, Hokage-sama. After Kakashi finished speaking, he took the scroll and left here. Sande looked at his back with some inexplicable meaning in his deep eyes. Bond, I hope something can be changed. After leaving the Hokage's office, Kakashi went home to wash up briefly and then prepared to inform Naraku. After Naraku left the office on the other side, he met an acquaintance when he was about to go to Konoha Hospital. Wearing a green tights and a mushroom hairstyle. It was K. I saw that he was practicing handstand at this time. After seeing Naraku, he put one hand on the ground and exerted force. His body drew an arc in the air and then landed steadily in front of Naraku. Yo. Z. Naraku, where have you been recently? I haven't seen you for several days, brother. K. Naraku said with a smile on his face when he saw an acquaintance. I'm out on a mission. Hey, you've already started your mission. K opened his mouth and showed his shining white teeth. Not bad. Naraku is indeed my lifelong rival. Then next time we can go on a mission together. Chapter 27 Rude Movement. Forehead. Naraku was stunned when he heard K say that he wanted to perform missions with him. He remembered that if there were no special events, Anbu would rarely perform missions with other people. There should be a chance. Naraku murmured softly. Later, after rejecting K's invitation to walk around the village while standing on his head, Naraku returned to the hospital. In Kushina's hospital room. Shizune, dressed as a nurse, was doing a daily checkup on Kushina. Call. Next to her, there was a little red toad that was sleeping soundly, and bursts of snores reached Shizune's ears. It's toaditis. Shizune was already used to this. Every time she came to check up on Kushina, Todan looked like this. When will Tsunade-sama come back to pick me up? And Naraku should have completed the task soon, right? After the inspection was completed, Shizune murmured softly, because it is peacetime now, Konoha Hospital does not have many tasks. Now except for checking Kushina every day, she basically has nothing else to do. This seems very boring to a young girl. Boom. Boom. Just then there was a knock on the door, followed closely by Naraku's voice. It's Shizune-san, have you finished the inspection? It's Naraku who's back, Shizune said with a smile on her face, then stood up and opened the door. What she didn't notice was that the eyelids of Todan, who was sleeping next to him, also twitched twice. Because of Kushina's special status, Shizune would close the door tightly every time she examined her. Afterwards, Naraku and Shizune chatted for a while, and Shizune left here. Hey, Todan, thank you for your hard work, Naraku said to Todan with a smile in the ward. Ha. You're back. Todan said with a yawn, as if he had just woken up. Since you're back, I'll go back. After saying that, Todan didn't give Naraku a chance to react. He turned into a burst of white mist and returned to Myomu Mountain. Well, this guy's really good. Naraku smiled silently, but with a personality like Todan's, it's pretty good that he can stay here for so long. Then Naraku closed his eyes, and a strange energy gathered in him. Kaguya's heart eyes open. At this moment, Naraku's perception was greatly amplified. with him as the center. A 10-meter range around him was covered by Kaguya's heart eyes. In this state, Naraku could clearly sense two powerful chakra fluctuations next to him. One was somewhat similar to his chakra, while the other was full of violent aura. Naraku knew that these two chakras were the chakra of Kushina and the Kyuubi in her body. To be precise, it should be the chakra of the Yin Ninetales. My sister's chakra has strengthened a little more, Naraku murmured, and then he closed Kaguya's inner eye. A smile appeared on Naraku's lips. Kushina's condition was getting better and better, which meant that the time until she woke up was getting shorter and shorter. However, there are a lot of troubles. Naraku opened his eyes, and his dark eyes turned scarlet. It was the Sharingan of the three Megatama. Naraku walked up to Kushina and gently opened her eyelids with his hands. The three black Megatama in the pupils began to rotate rapidly, and the power of the pupils slowly seeped towards Kushina's spiritual world. Well, Naraku let out a cry of pain, and then a bitter smile appeared on his lips. Is it really not possible? I don't know how Sasuke did it at that time, since Naraku's Sharingan broke through to the three Megatama. He has tried more than once to enter Kushina's spiritual world, but failed every time. Naraku understands that this is because his eye power is not strong enough. Only when he reaches the level of kaleidoscope can he easily enter the spiritual world of others. But he clearly remembered that Sasuke in the original work relied on the three Megatama Sharingan to enter Naruto's spiritual world. Forget it, I'll wake up soon anyway. Naraku had no choice but to finally give up. In fact, he wanted to enter Kushina's spiritual world for two purposes. One was to see Kyuubi, and he felt that, as long as he entered Kushina's spiritual world, she could wake up early. Boom, boom. A burst of white mist appeared, and after Naraku separated two shadow clones to guard Kushina, his body got up and left. He then returned to his room next door. After opening the room, there were two figures inside. If you look carefully, you will find that these two people look exactly like Naraku. Yes, these two people are also his shadow clones. They were separated before he went out to perform the mission, and the purpose was to protect Kushina. If someone really takes action against Kushina, the shadow clone can still pass the news to him, even if he is defeated. Thank you for your hard work, Naraku murmured, and then released the two shadow clones. Boom, boom. As two groups of white mist appeared, the two shadow clones dissipated. In an instant, Naraku felt that there were many more memories in his mind, but the memories of the two shadow clones did not cause any damage to him. After digesting the memory of the shadow clone, Naraku's face gradually became ugly. In his memory, during the few days he went out on missions, strangers kept appearing around the hospital, and most of them were people wearing masks. Based on the attire of these people, Naraku immediately thought of Konoha's greatest darkness, the roots of Danzo. But fortunately, these people were just looking around and did not approach Kushina's ward. But even so, Naraku also smelled a dangerous atmosphere. He knew very well who Danzo was, and now that he had sent people to get close to Kushina, he must have noticed something. Naraku began to think in his mind. Although his strength has grown rapidly now, he has only reached the level of a Jounin, and it is obviously impossible to compete with Danzo's roots. In this case, we can only ask the third generation to come forward, Naraku murmured. Thinking of this, he immediately walked out of the room and rushed towards the Hokage's office. Although the third generation and Danzo are of the same species, precisely because of this, the conflict between them is inevitable. The third generation is also obsessed with power. If he knew that Danzo was approaching Kushina, who was a Jinchuriki, Naraku believed that he would never sit idly by. It was already approaching evening, and the sun was slowly setting in the west. In the Hokage's office, the third generation was smoking his pipe and holding a scroll in his hand. After exhaling a puff of smoke, Sandai put the scroll away. You can see the word Sand written on the back of the scroll. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 It's Just Dog Eating Dog. Someone is coming. In the Hokage's office, after reading the information about Tsunagakure village on the scroll, the third generation murmured, "Hokage-sama." A figure dressed as an Anbu knelt on one knee in front of him. Sneak into Tsunagakure village secretly and pay close attention to their movements at all times, especially the news about the Jinchuriki, the third generation said in a serious tone. Jinchuriki. After hearing these 3 words, the Anbu's body shook unnoticeably. As the Anbu directly under the third Hokage, he had personally witnessed the Tailed Beast rebellion 2 years ago. Although the village did not suffer much damage due to Jiraiya's relationship with the 4th Hokage, the powerful 9 tails and 3 tails, the destructive power still impressed him. Although I felt a little nervous, the Anbu would never dare to disobey the Hokage's orders. Moreover, they were just inquiring about information, and were not asking him to actually fight the Tailed Beast. Yes, Hokage-sama, the Anbu said respectfully. Then he left here. Obviously, the third generation also got the news that Tsunagakure village was about to replace the Jinchuriki. Even though Konoha had signed an alliance with Tsunagakure, the third generation still remained vigilant about the Tailed Beasts. He didn't want to be like 2 years ago when the 3 tails of Karigakure village had to run to his door to find out. Boom. Boom. Just when Sunday was about to continue checking other information, the sound of knocking on the door sounded again. Come in. The person with red hair and a childish looking face was none other than Uzumaki Naraku. Then Naraku told the story of his close proximity to Kushina. Tsunade-sama said before she left that my sister will wake up soon. If something unexpected happens during this period, I'm worried about the. Naraku stopped here. He believed that with the IQ of 3 generations, he would not be able to guess what he was going to say next. As he expected, Sunday's expression changed instantly after hearing these words. He knew that the Kyuubi was sealed in Kushina and Naruto respectively. If it was just Kushina alone, he might not care too much, but if Kyuubi was added to it, he would have to pay attention to it. Naraku, I will handle this matter. The third generation calmed down and said in a deep voice. Naraku nodded. After getting the answer he wanted, he no longer had the idea of staying here and turned around and left. After all, he is still full of resentment towards the third generation in his heart. Whenever Naraku sees him, he will think of his poor nephew. Kyuubi. After Naraku left, Sunday fell into deep thought. He thought of the Tailed Beast rebellion 2 years ago, and also thought of Minato's death. Danzo, Sunday muttered. Go and invite Elder Shimura, the third generation said into the darkness as the Hokage. He has long noticed that the roots led by Danzo have become more active in the past 2 years. First, they suppressed the Uchiha clan, and then obtained many privileges from him under various excuses. If that's all, the third generation can still accept it. After all, Danzo's roots are still a part of Konoha, but he is just a shady blade of Sarutobi Hiruzen. Even the suppression of the Uchiha clan was secretly caused by him. In his mind, the Uchiha clan, which had become more powerful in recent years, had seriously threatened his position as Hokage. Especially after geniuses like Shizu and Itachi appeared in their clan. Putting aside the affairs of the Uchiha clan, Danzo has now begun to let his roots get close to Kushina. This is undoubtedly provoking the authority of the third generation. Danzo, there are some things that you can't touch, Sunday thought to himself. After a while, Danzo, who was wrapped in bandages, came to the Hokage's office under the leadership of the Anbu. Hiruzen, what do you want from me? Danzo said as soon as he came in. It could be seen from his tone that he had no respect for the third Hokage in his heart. Ignoring Danzo's words, the third generation stretched out his right hand and waved it in the air, and then set up a simple isolation barrier around it. Danzo's face became serious when he saw this. A heated argument ensued between the two. Of course, the argument was eventually won by the third generation, and Danzo promised that he would never let the roots get close to Kushina again. Although Danzo was very reluctant, the third generation gave him orders directly as the Hokage, and he could not refuse. After all, the Hokage was the supreme leader of a village. Danzo left the Hokage's office with an angry look on his face. Although the roots can no longer get close to Kushina, the third generation's actions this time also confirmed one thing for Danzo. 9 tails actually turned into 2. Haha, Hiruzen, the position of Hokage will be mine sooner or later. Naraku. didn't know anything about what happened in the Hokage's office, but even if he knew it, he wouldn't pay attention to it. In his heart, the third generation and Danzo were just dogs eating dogs at this time. He had just returned to Konoha Hospital. When he was about to go in, he saw an acquaintance and couldn't help but stop. "Hey, Brother K, you're here." In front of him was Kakashi, who had just arrived from home point at this time. He was wearing black sportswear, a black mask, long silver white hair, and his slender figure added a bit of coldness to him. After so many years of getting along with each other, Kakashi is now completely accustomed to the title Brother K. Then the two of them went to Ichiraku Ramen for dinner, and finally stood side by side on the Hokage Rock. "By the way, Naraku, Sandaime-sama wants you to go on a mission with me," Kakashi said. "You actually want me to go on a mission with you?" Naraku was slightly startled when he heard this. "Is there no one left in your team?" Naraku blurted out. Kakashi shook his head slightly. "Now the village has received a huge number of entrusted tasks. Both Anbu and other capable ninjas in the village are performing tasks. As for the people in our team, they are all performing other tasks and can't get away for the time being. That's it." Naraku nodded. He had no objection to who he would go on a mission with, let alone Kakashi, whom he was extremely familiar with point in the entire ninja world. Apart from Minato and his wife, Kakashi was undoubtedly the person he trusted the most point, and of course Gai and his teacher Jiraiya point. These people all had a great bond with him. "Brother K, how are you thinking about the Sharingan?" Naraku said. "Sharingan." Kakashi reached out and touched the forehead protector covering his eyes. The 3 Magatama Sharingan under the forehead protector was constantly absorbing the chakra in his body. Various abnormal emotions such as reluctance, doubt, and hesitation appeared in his right eye. Never mind. Ugh. Chapter 29 Snow Country. At Konoha Hospital, Naraku, who was separated from Kakashi, came to Kushina's room again. Because he had to go out on a mission tomorrow, he channeled Todian again. After receiving several cold looks from the other party, Naraku finally convinced him to stay here to protect Kushina point. After convincing Todian, Naraku returned to his room, and at the same time, he also eliminated the 2 shadow clones left behind just now. Then he opened the scroll that Kakashi gave him, which contained information about the mission. "Snow Country, Fenghua Zayaksu," Naraku said with a look of surprise on his face. Just like last time, after memorizing all the contents on the scroll, he destroyed the scroll directly. This mission is not difficult at all. Naraku remembers that Kakashi in the original book completed this mission alone, but it is not easy to say that it is simple. After all, although there is no ninja village in the Snow Country, there are some snow ninjas. It belongs to the private power of the daimyo. This mission was commissioned by the current daimyo of Snow Country, Kazuhana Haoki. He sensed that his brother was about to rebel, so he asked Konoha for help. The purpose of asking Konoha for help is not to protect his position as daimyo, but to ask Konoha to take his daughter Fenghua Koyuki out. Naraku can understand this. After all, Snow Country is an independent country. Even Konoha in the past could not directly intervene in the competition of daimyo in other countries, let alone now. Naraku carefully recalled the content about the Snow Country. There were not only powerful defensive chakra armors, but also ice shield ninjutsu. In the original work, Kakashi was defeated by a ninja named Wolf Fang Avalanche in the land of Snow. It can be seen that the armed forces of the Kingdom of Snow are not weak, not to mention that there is a ruthless Fenghua Furudeo on top of Langair Avalanche who killed his brother to seize the throne. It can be seen from this that the armed forces of the Kingdom of Snow are not weak. Fang Avalanche. Naraku thought of the ninja who defeated Kakashi in the original work, and a plan quietly rose in his mind. "Brother K, don't blame me, eh?" Night of silence. Naraku got up, said goodbye to Kushina, and left the hospital. Of course, he also left 2 shadow clones behind. After meeting Kakashi at the entrance of the village, the two set off directly towards their destination. 3 days later, 2 figures appeared at the border of Snow Country. The hair color, one silver and one red, proved that the visitors were none other than Naraku. Naraku stood here, with endless snowflakes as far as the eye could see. Compared with Konoha, Snow Country is a small country. and it is also called snow country because it snows all year round. People here can hardly see the sun or feel its warmth. There are only biting cold winds and white snowflakes all year round. It's strange that such an environment can develop, Naraku thought to himself. In his opinion, even the yellow sandy environment in the Kingdom of Wind is better than here. Here the two of them changed into ordinary people's clothes and then stepped into the country of snow. After all, they were performing tasks as Anbu, so naturally they could not be exposed. While walking in the Kingdom of Snow, they also met some ordinary people along the way. Judging from their behavior, there has been no coup in the Kingdom of Snow yet. Soon the two of them arrived at the center of the snow country. To be on the safe side, they did not go directly to Daming Mansion to find Fenghua Heiexu, but found a hotel nearby to stay. After traveling long distances for several days, even those with Jonin strength could not help but feel a little tired, not only physically, but also mentally. However, they also knew that time waits for no one. In order to complete the task as soon as possible, the two of them just took a brief rest and sneaked into Daming Mansion under the cover of night. The two of them split up and soon found the daimyo Fenghua Heieki. Then Kakashi suddenly stood in front of Fenghua Heieki, while Naraku hid in the dark to observe the situation. Who are you? Facing the sudden appearance of the person, Fenghua Heieki was obviously a little nervous, took a step back and asked. The tone was full of caution. I'm a ninja from Konoha, here to escort your daughter out of the land of snow, Kakashi said coldly. At this time, he was wearing a white cat face mask with no expression. Fenghua Heieki was obviously relieved when he heard this. Just now he thought Kakashi was the person sent by his brother Fenghua Furuto to assassinate him. After a brief negotiation between the two, Fenghua Heieki took Kakashi to find his daughter. Master, ninja, please bring Zaiatsu to a man named Sandafu from the craftsman country. That man is my old friend. He will be responsible for taking care of Zaiatsu. Kakashi nodded lightly and said nothing more. Naraku, who was hiding in the dark, couldn't help but shake his head slightly when he saw this scene. In his opinion, Fenghua Heieki, as a daimyo, had failed. Although Snow Country is a small country, as a daimyo, there is no ninja guard around him. This scene proves that his power has long been ignored, and now he only has the name of a daimyo. Kakashi and the two on the other side have arrived at Fenghua Koyuki's room. At this time, Fenghua Koyuki was just a child younger than Naraku. After Fenghua Koyuki comforted her, she agreed to go to Takumi country with Kakashi. Of course the reason is just to travel. Father, Zaiatsu wants to stay with you. Fenghua Zaiatsu seemed to have noticed something and said with a dark expression. After hearing this, Fenghua Zaiatsu felt helpless and at the same time a little reluctant to let go. If it wasn't because he couldn't protect himself, how could he be willing to leave his young daughter? But this time the situation was really bad. His younger brother Fenghua Furuto returned to the land of snow after disappearing for a few years and also mastered some powerful ninjutsu. However, in just half a year, his confidant died. Death, injury. Until now, there is no one around him who can be used. Now, even a fool understands that the ultimate goal of Fenghua Furuto is his position as a daimyo. Now, all he can do is send Fenghua Zaiatsu away. This is his last wish. As for himself, he had already guessed the ending. As for asking Kakashi and the others to protect themselves, Fenghua Heieki had never thought about such a thing. The entire ninja world has regulations, and no country is allowed to participate in the political struggles of other countries. The struggle between him and Fenghua Ragaya was like the struggle between the heads of a family. As his younger brother, Fenghua Furuto has the ability and status to sit as a daimyo of Snow Country. Fenghua Zaiatsu stretched out her hand and touched Zaiatsu's head twice. Zaiatsu, be obedient. Dad will pick you up in a while, okay? Then, he took out a hexagonal crystal from his arms and handed the crystal to Zaiatsu. Chapter 30 Missions and Companions. Ninja-sama, I'm sorry to trouble you, Zaiatsu, Fenghua Heieki said respectfully, bending down to Kakashi with a hint of begging in his tone. As a daimyo, he put down his dignity and status for his daughter. Naraku, who was hiding in the dark, felt a little depressed when he saw this scene. Although the world of ninjas is full of cruelty and killing, it also has a tender side. No matter where you are, family ties are inseparable. Someone is coming. Suddenly, Naraku's expression changed. Under his perception, there were several powerful auras approaching here. He quickly gestured towards Kakashi. At this time, Kakashi also noticed something unusual, and his face became serious. How many people are approaching here? Them? Feng Huazeoxu's expression changed when she heard this, and she hurriedly said, "Take Xiaoxu and go first." "What's wrong, Dad? What happened?" Even though she was young, Feng Huazeoxu still noticed something was wrong. "Come on, Feng Hua." Heiauki didn't answer Koyuki's words, but just urged Kakashi again. Hearing this, Kakashi no longer hesitated, held Feng Hua Koyuki in his arms, and left here in a flashpoint. After watching Kakashi and the others disappear from his sight, Feng Hua Heiauki breathed a sigh of relief, and the expression on his face became calm. "Since Xiaoxu is safe, I have nothing to worry about. My brother, let me see what you want to do." With this thought in her heart, Feng Huazeoxu stepped out of the room. Coincidentally, 3 figures also appeared outside the room. "This is Feng Hua Raging Tao." Naraku judged the identity of the man based on the appearance of the leader and Feng Hua's Aoiu. "Natao, what's the matter with coming here so late?" Feng Huazeoxu asked, pretending not to know anything. What to do? At this time, Feng Hua Furudeo, who was fully prepared, no longer had any worries, and directly broke up with Feng Huazeoxu. "I'm here to take back what I deserve. Whatever you deserve. Nutao, you and I are both brothers. If there is anything you like from me, just take it." When he said this, Feng Huazeoxu still had some illusions in his heart. Who wouldn't want to live if they could? The position of the daimyo, the hexagonal crystal, Feng Hua Nutao said directly, "Hand over these 2 things, and I can spare Xiaoxu's life. Otherwise, Natao, do you want to rebel?" Feng Huazeoxu scolded. At the same time, he also knew that he was in doom today. Rebellion. Haha. Feng Hua Furudeo ignored him at this time and just waved his hand to signal the 2 people behind him to enter the room. He was going to use Feng Hua Xiaoxu's life to threaten his brother and make him give up his position as daimyo. At this moment, Naraku, who was hiding in the dark, had a flash of hesitation in his heart. He knew that when Feng Hua Nutao discovered that Feng Hua Xiaoxu and the hexagonal crystal were missing, he would definitely kill Feng Hua Xiaoxu. Forget it. Naraku shook his head slightly. Although he could save Feng Hua Heiauki with his strength, he might not be able to take him out of the country of snow. He could feel that Feng Hua Furauki was stronger than him and Kakashi, not to mention the other party. There is also a powerful Langai Zubeng under his command. At this time, 2 of Feng Hua Nutao's men walked out of the room with surprised expressions on their faces. "Sir, there is no one inside." "How could there be no one?" Hearing this, Feng Hua Nutao looked angry. He knew his brother's temper very well. Without Feng Hua Xiaoxu's threat, it would be difficult for him to compromise. But things had come to this point, and it was impossible for him to give up at this time. A stern look flashed in Feng Hua Nutao's eyes. Suddenly, his eyes froze, and he looked sharply in one direction. Although he didn't find anything unusual, it still aroused his vigilance. Without him giving an order, the 2 people next to him were already searching for that location. Call. Naraku, who had left there, breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't expect Feng Hua Raging's perception ability to be so strong. He just used a little chakra and was almost discovered by the opponent. Then he no longer hesitated. Chakra instantly filled his legs, and his whole body rushed in one direction as fast as he could. "My elder brother, it seems that I have underestimated you." Feng Hua Nutao looked at Feng Huazeoxu with a ferocious smile. Looking at the familiar face, the resentment in his heart rose again. In fact, when they were young, the relationship between the 2 brothers was quite good. As an elder brother, Feng Hua Heiauki also took good care of him. It's just that this relationship changed after their father passed the daimyo position to Feng Hua Heiauki. Power changes people beyond recognition, and this is what happened at this time. His inner desire for power and resentment towards his brother led him to the path of killing his brother, Xiao. Feng Huaseoksu seemed to realize something and whispered his daughter's name, and then his neck was pinched by a big hand point click. Feng Huaseoksu was just an ordinary person. He had no ability to resist in front of the powerful Feng Huaseoksu. In just a moment, the rage broke his neck point boom. Then he threw Feng Huaseoksu's body aside. Notify Zubeng and make sure he intercepts Feng Huaseoksu. Yes, the reason why he didn't show so much concern about Feng Huaseoksu's disappearance Zhang, because he had prepared in advance. His most capable general, Langia Zubeng, was already guarding them on the only way to leave the country of snow. Well, you let go, Kakashi. On the other side looked at Feng Huaseoksu who was struggling in his arms, and his only exposed right eye was full of helplessness. Point boom. There was no way. Just to be on the safe side, Kakashi knocked out Feng Huaseoksu with a knife point. Of course, he controlled the force, and it would only make her unconscious for a while at most, and would not cause other harm. Without Zyuo's disturbance, Kakashi's speed became faster, and he arrived at a place after a while. This is a snow white glacier, where he and Naraku agreed together. What's going on? Kakashi frowned slightly. After waiting for a while, Naraku's speed was not much slower than him. Normally, he should have arrived by now. Kakashi felt an unknown feeling in his heart. Did something happen to you? Thinking of this, Kakashi frowned slightly. He first created a shadow clone and let the shadow clone hide with Feng Huaseoksu. Then his body returned directly to the original path without any hesitation. After losing so many people he cared about in succession, there was no comparison between mission and companions in his heart. Chapter 31 Wolf Fang Avalanche. Kakashi, who was about to go back to find Naraku, met the two of them before he had gone far. They wore a special kind of armor and attacked Kakashi with kunai in their hands. These two people were the same two people chased Naraku before. They chased Naraku all the way here. Faced with a sudden attack, Kakashi was not careless and took out the short blade from his back and started a fierce battle with the two. Ice Shield, Ice Prison technique. The burly man among the two quickly formed seals with his hands and then shouted loudly around Kakashi. White ice suddenly rose from the ground, eventually forming an ice prison and trapping him inside. Very good, I've trapped you. The strong man couldn't help but smile after seeing the ice prison completely enveloping Kakashi. Be careful behind you. But before he could get too happy, his companion's exclamations reached his ears. A strong man turned his head and saw only a hint of silver. Puff. The next moment he felt a chill on his neck, and subconsciously he covered his neck with his hands. Red blood continued to flow from his fingers. Ugh. After a cry of pain, the strong man lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Then Kakashi's figure was revealed, and you could see that the silver short blade in his hand was stained with blood. Ice Shield Ninjutsu, Kakashi muttered. Just when the ice prison was about to form, he sneaked underground, came behind the strong man, and killed him when he relaxed his vigilance. After all, this is still a gap in strength. The strong man is just a chunin. Even if he can use Ice Shield Ninjutsu, he is still not enough to face Kakashi. The next battle became even easier. The remaining man was as strong as a strong man, and finally fell in front of Kakashi. After sealing the two borders with scrolls, and erasing all traces of the battle around them, Kakashi turned back again, because he had just received news of the shadow clones and Naraku had already arrived at the place where they gathered. His nervous mood relaxed a little unconsciously, as expected of Brother K. It has indeed been solved. Under the glacier, Naraku, who had his eyes closed, seemed to sense something, and suddenly opened his eyes. Next to him was Feng Huaseoksu who had fainted. However, if this is the case, it won't put any pressure on you, Brother K. Naraku murmured. Then he turned his head and looked aside. A smile slowly appeared on his lips. I hope your performance can be better. After a while, Kakashi rushed over. He frowned slightly and looked at Naraku. Where were you just now? Well, Naraku was slightly startled. I was targeted by two mice, and it took me a while to get rid of them. Naraku explained casually. Okay, we have to take this little girl out of here quickly, otherwise we will be in trouble when the wind and waves chase after her. Hearing this, Kakashi didn't say anything else. After bending down to hold the fainted Feng Huaseoksu in his arms, they set off again and left here. but they didn't walk long before they stopped. It wasn't that they were tired, but a man wearing snow ninja armor stood in front of them. Spike. Avalanche. Naraku's eyes suddenly lit up when he saw the person coming. Just when he was about to rush forward, someone was faster than him. It was Kakashi. Take Zaiatsu and go first. After saying these words, he had already rushed in front of Langai Azubeng with a short blade in his hand. The short blade drew a bright light in the air and pointed at the opponent's vital points like tearing the air. Oh, they're just two brats. Lang Yatsubeng just turned slightly sideways to avoid Kakashi's attack, and his sharp eyes fell on Naraku and the others with disdain. Konoha is already in such a state of decline now, came a contemptuous tone. Although both Kakashi wore masks, the well-informed Wolf Fang Avalanche still saw their identities. Not paying attention to Langai Avalanche's ridicule, when Naraku rushed over to Kakashi, he was already carrying Fenghua Koyuki and rushed in the other direction. Kakashi's performance did not exceed Naraku's expectations. Kid, I can't let you go just like that. Seeing Naraku about to leave, Langai Azubeng was about to take action. But the next moment, a silver figure blocked his face again. Get out of the way, kid, or you will die, Langai Azubeng said, after seeing Kakashi standing in front of him point unless absolutely necessary. Langai Azubeng didn't want to really fight with Kakashi and the others. Although he said he looked down on Konoha, he was very clear about Konoha's status and his heart point. Even if Konoha is in decline now, it is not something that the Snow Kingdom can provoke, and at the age of Kakashi and Naraku, they are definitely Konoha's geniuses, which undoubtedly makes him a little more worried. Kakashi naturally ignored his words. At this time, he was holding a short blade and staring at the Wolf Fang Avalanche in front of him with a serious expression. Just from the fact that the other party evaded his attack just now, it can be seen that Langai Avalanche's taijutsu is superior to his own. His strength is very different from the two Snow Ninjas before, and Kakashi dare not be careless. In that case, don't blame me for being rude. As the strongest thug under Fenghua Furtao, Langai Azubeng was naturally not an easy talker, and quickly formed seals with his hands. Ice escape, white whale. With a low cry from Wolf Fang Avalanche, the ground shook violently, and then the white whale flashed out from the ground. The white whale broke through the snow and pounced straight towards Kakashi. Kakashi's eyes trembled. The forehead protector on his left eye had already been raised, and his scarlet eyes exuded strangeness in the snow-white environment. With the dynamic vision of the Sharingan, he easily captured the trajectory of the beluga, and then used his feet to jump backwards, avoiding the beluga's attack. That's right. After seeing Kakashi's scarlet eyes, Langai Azubeng was slightly startled, but then his eyes became fierce. It's not over yet. He propped up one hand and made a fierce stroke in the direction of Kakashi. The white whale on the ground jumped up and pounced on Kakashi in the air. Kakashi didn't panic at all and quickly formed seals with his hands. Chidori, blue. Arcs of electricity rose in his hands, as ferocious as real thunder and lightning. Then Kakashi held the thunder in his hand and started a head-on confrontation with the white whale that rushed over. Boom. The huge collision set off a wave of air, and the white whale composed of ice turned into fragments under the impact of thunder and lightning. What kind of ninjutsu is this? At this time, Wolf Fang Avalanche was a little shocked. In his opinion, Kakashi was just a teenage kid who could actually block his attack. He is indeed a genius of Konoha, but how many times can you block such an attack? Chapter 30 to Kakashi's shortcomings. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Kakashi didn't pay attention to the words of Wolf Fang Avalanche. After quickly forming seals with his hands, he opened his mouth and spit out a huge fireball. The intense heat generated by the fireball evaporated the surrounding snow. Kid, you are really young at using fire escape ninjutsu in the land of snow. Lang Yatsubeng easily dodged the fireball attack by turning around. You escaped. Kakashi was not surprised that the Heiau fireball did not hurt the opponent. There was a gap in strength between him and Langai Avalanche. What's more, in this snowy environment, the opponent's ice escape would undoubtedly be stronger. But Kakashi also had his own plan in mind. He turned his head and glanced to the other side, where Naraku's figure had almost disappeared from his sight. That's right, right now, he has no intention of actually fighting the Wolf Fang Avalanche. At most, it's just delaying time. At this time, Langai Azubeng also realized this and looked towards Naraku. I can't let you go like this. Ice escape, Wolf Fang avalanche technique. The snowflakes on the snow quickly rose and gathered, finally forming snow wolves. The snow wolf opened its big mouth and bit hard at Kakashi. Kakashi didn't panic at all. He kicked his legs to the ground and stepped back, while his hands kept forming seals. This is Wolf Fang avalanche, who had been paying attention to Kakashi, showed a surprised expression after seeing the familiar seal on his hand. Ice shield, white whale. As Kakashi completed the seal, he let out a low shout, and a huge white whale emerged from the snow. This white whale looks no different from the one in Wolf Fang avalanche just now, except that it is a little smaller. The huge white whale quickly rushed into the wolf pack, and the huge impact caused a burst of white snowflakes. Boom. The beluga collided with the wolves, and white ice fragments flew in all directions. After this blow, most of the wolves were wiped out, and the beluga's body was also covered with deep pits. It turned out to be the Sharingan. Looking at Kakashi's scarlet left eye, Lang Yatsubeng murmured. He followed the wind and waves in the snow country for several years. Although he was not very familiar with the Sharingan, he was not unfamiliar with it either at this moment. He put away his inner contempt and began to regard Kakashi as an opponent of the same level. Boom. With both feet exerting force, Wolf Fang avalanche shot out towards Kakashi, while his hands were also forming seals quickly. Ice escape. The young eagle pecks. In an instant, dozens of eagles formed of ice appeared around him. The young eagles were the size of an adult's hand, and their sharp beaks flashed with cold light. All of these young eagles rushed towards Kakashi at great speed. Call out, call out, call out. There were constant crackling sounds in the air. In that case, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Kakashi reacted extremely quickly. Almost instantly, dozens of spinning shurikens landed in front of him. Boom. 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 The shuriken collided with the eaglet formed by the ice, and the huge impact lifted up the snowflakes on the ground. At this time, Langai Azubeng looked serious, and the snowflakes in the sky blocked his sight. Guy. Suddenly there was a sound of breaking through the air, and the short silver blade tore through the air and stabbed fiercely towards Wolf Fang avalanche. How could the mere snowflakes in the sky block the Sharingan's observation? The short blade fell heavily on Langai avalanche, but the next moment Kakashi felt something was wrong. In his sight, the short blade was blocked by the armor on Langai avalanche. Haha, kid, you are still too young. Langai Azubeng chuckled, and the next moment a burst of white mist sprayed out from his armor. The air around where the white mist passed instantly froze. Its armor infused with special energy. Kakashi, who stepped back dozens of meters, looked at the special armor on Langai avalanche. Frowning slightly, Kakashi felt that things were getting more difficult. He took out a kunai from his arms. As for the short blade just now, it had been wrapped in white mist from the armor and turned into a ball of ice. Then the two started a fierce battle again. Ice escape, white whale, ice shield, Wolf Fang avalanche technique. Noticing that Naraku had gone away, Lang Yatsubeng felt a little anxious. Fenghua Nutao had given him the order to bring back Fenghua Koyuki, and Kakashi was not his target. Wanting to escape quickly, he used two ninjutsu in succession. The huge white whale and dozens of ice wolves all rushed towards Kakashi, while he himself turned and rushed towards Naraku. How could I let you leave? Kakashi murmured in his heart, and then a blue light rose in his hands. The blue thunder sounded like 1,000 birds singing in unison. Chidori, Kakashi, who held the thunder in his hand, shattered the white whale and tore apart the pack of wolves, and then he blocked the avalanche of wolf fangs again without hesitation. Ha. Ha. His chest rose and fell, and he continued to release ninjutsu. At this time, there was not much chakra left in Kakashi's body, and he could only use Chidori once at most. It should have gone far, Kakashi muttered. Ice escape, snow tiger pounces. Wolf Fang avalanche didn't give him much time to breathe. After quickly forming seals with his hands, he used another powerful ninjutsu. The two 2-meter tall white tigers instantly looked like real tigers. The white tigers jumped fiercely and pounced towards Kakashi. Wolf Fang Avalanche has seen that there is not much chakra left in Kakashi's body, and due to the blessing of the environment, he will not consume too much chakra when using Ice Escape ninjutsu, and he still has enough chakra points so now he can consume Kakashi to death. As long as he keeps using ninjutsu. Kakashi was naturally aware of his intentions, but he had no good solution. After all, the amount of chakra was his shortcoming. In fact, he originally had a lot of chakra. Although the Hatake clan was not known for its chakra, it still had more chakra than the average ninja. It's just that, since he transplanted Obito's left eye, more than half of his original chakra was instantly drained. Kakashi does not have the blood of the Uchiha clan, and the Sharingan cannot be closed, which means that the Sharingan consumes his chakra all the time, which is why he often uses a forehead protector to cover the Sharingan. But that can only slow down the consumption of chakra a little. Because there was not much chakra left, Kakashi did not choose to resist forcefully this time, but just used his flexible body to avoid the white tiger's attack. We have to find a way to retreat, Kakashi thought helplessly. Kakashi knew very well that with very little chakra left, he could no longer compete with the Wolf Fang Avalanche. Roar. At this moment, the white tiger, who had been dodged by Kakashi, suddenly turned around and rushed towards him again. Chapter 33. Let's talk about it. After returning to the village, in a hidden cave, Naraku came here with the fainted Fenghua Zyaksu, and he slowly put the girl on his back to the ground. Looking at the other party's cute face, Naraku couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He is indeed a big star in the future. Excuse me, our big star. Please stay here for a while. Boom. Boom. A burst of white mist appeared, and Naraku separated to shadow clones to guard Fenghua Koyuki. Then he walked out of the cave and rushed in the direction of Kakashi and the two. Brother K, you should feel the pressure now. Naraku thought secretly in his heart. In fact, if he and Kakashi join forces, they will not be afraid of the avalanche of wolf teeth. After all, the other party is only a jounin at most, that is, taking advantage of the environment and the special armor on his body to gain an advantage. And if he and Kakashi join forces, not to mention being invincible below the cage level, at least they will be invincible. The reason why he did not choose to face the Wolf Fang Avalanche with Kakashi was partly because of their mission this time. After all, their mission was just to rescue Fenghua Zyaksu. What if the two of them stayed to deal with the Wolf Fang Avalanche and the wind and waves rushed over? Then the gain would outweigh the loss. On the other hand, it's because of Kakashi. He wants the other party to feel some pressure, or more accurately, he wants Kakashi to realize the shortcomings of the Sharingan. Although the Sharingan is powerful, it can also see people. For Kakashi, who does not have Uchiha blood, the Sharingan will undoubtedly do more harm than good. In the original work, if it weren't for the Sharingan, how could he have not grown much in strength for more than 10 years? You must know that his talent is not weaker than that of anyone in Hokage. If nothing else, even for the sake of future enemies, Naraku decided to change Kakashi's current situation, at least to help him solve the Sharingan issue. The other side, at this time, Kakashi was completely passive in the face of the fierce attack of Wolf Fang Avalanche. Because of his chakra, he didn't dare to let go. Even if he had a move, he could only avoid the opponent's offensive, but even so, he was still dragging the opponent forward. What? An annoying brat. Langaya Zubeng, who had been entangled with him, felt a little irritated. In that case, let's deal with you first, Wolf. Fang Avalanche took a step forward, white mist sprayed out from the armor again, and then he rushed towards Kakashi at high speed, and at the same time, formed seals with his hands, releasing a dozen snow wolves. The snow wolves surrounded Kakashi, making it impossible for him to escape for a while. There is really no way. This chakra is really not enough. Kakashi smiled helplessly under the mask, then quickly formed seals with his hands, and blow lightning appeared again. But this time, the thunder and lightning did not gather in his hands, but traveled over his body, blue arcs of electricity flashing on his body. Chidori style. The ninjutsu developed by Sasuke in the original work was developed by Kakashi more than 10 years in advance. Under Naraku's prompts, crack, thunder and lightning flashed. While the Chidori Ryu strengthened Kakashi's body, it also gave him good defensive capabilities. The snow wolves rushing towards him were already broken into pieces by lightning before they even touched his body. Bring it on. Then Kakashi exerted force with his feet and collided head on with the wolf fang avalanche coming towards him. The two began to fight with taijutsu. Although the armor of Wolf Fang Avalanche has strong defensive capabilities and has some special abilities, Kakashi, whose whole body was surrounded by lightning, was not weak at the same time. After several rounds, neither of them took advantage. Cheap point however, Kakashi knew that this was only temporarily. In fact, after using the Chidori style, his chakra was about to bottom out, and he could not maintain this state for long. The aftermath of the battle between the two set off a flurry of snowflakes. After once again dodging the opponent's attack, Kakashi no longer had the desire to continue fighting, and turned around, and retreated to the other side. Langire Avalanche glanced at this, and finally gave up the idea of continuing to track, because the direction Kakashi left was inconsistent with the direction Naraku, Fenghua Koyuki and the others had just escaped, and he didn't really think about it in his heart. Kill Kakashi. Then he chased in the direction of Naraku and the others. After a while, Kakashi met up with Naraku who had just come out of the cave. As for Wolf Fang Avalanche, he was just chasing Naraku's shadow clone. Then they returned to the cave together. This was a place that the two of them had found in advance. It was very hidden and would not be discovered by the Wolf Fang Avalanche in a short time. After entering the cave, Kakashi immediately began to restore chakra. Brother K, should we think about it? At this moment, Naraku suddenly said. Hearing this, Kakashi looked at Naraku with his exposed right eye like a dead fish. Let's talk about it after we return to the village. Then he closed his eyes and began to concentrate on absorbing chakra. Naraku didn't say anything else about this. Some things shouldn't be taken too far. He believed Kakashi would figure it out on his own, and he didn't explicitly refuse just now, right? Sharingan, haha, just wait for it to be sealed. While Kakashi was absorbing chakra, Naraku also took out some dry food from his backpack. After running around for a long time, he also needed to replenish his energy. As for the Binglian pills, Naraku was afraid that he would not grow taller if he ate them. One day later, in a small town outside the border of Snow Country, a young man with silver hair came here with two children aged 7 or 8. These three people are none other than Naraku. After leaving the country of snow, they decided to come here to replenish their food. After all, their destination, the country of craftsmen, was still some distance away from here. If it were just Naraku and the others, they might just prepare some dry food and set off directly, but that was not possible now. They also had a 7 or 8-year-old girl with them, so they had to prepare more food and water. Kakashi ni I, Naraku ni I, can I still go back to the land of snow? Fenghua Koyuki asked the two of them with red eyes. Even though she is young, she still understands some things. In addition, children in this world are generally precocious, so there are some things that Kakashi and the others cannot hide, even if they want to. Kakashi did not answer her words. In his heart, he thought that, if nothing unexpected happened, Fenghua Koyuki might never be able to return to the land of snow in this life. Okay, when you grow up, Zyatsu, my brother will take you back to the country of snow. Okay, Naraku said at this time. Really? Real? Kakashi didn't pay attention when he heard this. He thought it was just what Naraku said to make him happy. Chapter 34 Seal, Sharingan. 2 days later, Naraku and the three of them came to the country of craftsmen. After making inquiries, they quickly found the man named Third Doctor. Maybe Fenghua Zyatsu had already informed him, so the Third Doctor was not surprised by the arrival of several people. He only showed a sad expression after seeing the young Fenghua Zyatsu. Kakashi ni I, Naraku ni I, you must come back to see me. Fenghua Koyuki waved to the two of them with a look of reluctance. Okay, we will. After handing Fenghua Zyatsu to the Third Doctor, the two men's mission was successfully completed, and then they set off back to Konoha Point. Overall, this mission went relatively smoothly, and did not encounter any major obstacles. 3 days later, two figures appeared in a forest outside Konoha village, and it was Naraku and his wife. The long journey for several days made their faces a little tired, but fortunately the mission was completed, and they could go back to rest. But before that, they had one more thing. to do point looking at the woods that were about to disappear in front of him, and they were about to reach Konoha village. Naraku suddenly turned his head and looked at Kakashi, and then the two of them turned around and headed in the other direction with tacit understanding. Soon the two of them came to a hidden cave. Entering the cave, Naraku put his hand on a stone, and then a special black spell appeared on the stone. Gradually, there were more and more such spells, almost covering the entire cave. It's done. Naraku breathed a sigh of relief and took his hand away from the stone, and those densely packed black spells disappeared and were hidden within the mountain. This is a special isolation formation that Naraku has mastered. This formation is also the best among the many formations he has mastered. It can not only isolate everything in the formation, but also has certain defensive capabilities. Just like now, if someone wants to enter their cave, they will not be able to get in at all, unless they use external force to break the formation. But in that case, Naraku will sense it in advance. After making these preparations, Naraku turned to look at Kakashi and said, "How about K, bro? Get ready." Yes. Kakashi nodded heavily, then lifted the forehead protector that blocked his left eye, and the three Magatama Sharingan slowly rotated. Okay, if that's the case, then I'll get started. Naraku took out a blank scroll and spread it on the ground. Then he slowly raised his hands and began to form seals. Brother K, watch carefully. He didn't need to remind him. Kakashi was already staring at his movements at this time, especially the Sharingan. The three black Magatama had begun to rotate rapidly. 4-symbol seal. Naraku shouted low and put his hand on the scroll, and then a black whirlpool technique appeared on the scroll. That's right, it's the 4-symbol seal. Naraku in his previous life had thought that if Kakashi could master a sealing technique, a technique that could seal the Sharingan point, in that case, could we just seal the Sharingan when there is no battle like the Uchiha clan did, and then open the seal when using it? He had made this suggestion to Kakashi before, but Kakashi couldn't let go of his good friend, Uchiha Obito, and he never agreed. It was only this trip to the land of snow that made him more aware of the burden the Sharingan brought to him, so he chose to accept Naraku's suggestion. After all, it was just a seal, not a destruction of the Sharingan. As a genius, Kakashi is not stupid. He can still see clearly the current situation in Konoha village. The teacher died in the battle, the master's wife was in a coma, and their child became a Jinchuriki. Some of the actions of the third generation also made him feel a little dissatisfied. At this time, Kakashi also understood the importance of power, and only strong power can protect everything he cares about. 4-symbol seal. Just after Naraku completely used the 4 elephants seal, Kakashi also moved, using the same seal technique, and then a whirlpool technique appeared on the scroll again. Kakashi was not unfamiliar with sealing techniques. After all, he had contact with several people in the ninja world who were good at sealing techniques. He had often seen Minato using sealing techniques before, as expected of you, Kakashi. Looking at Kakashi, who succeeded once, Naraku thought to himself that among all the people Naraku has seen so far, Kakashi's talent is definitely the strongest. Even his brother-in-law, the youngest Hokage in history, Namibeng Shudor, in some aspects cannot compare to Kakashi. Of course, it's still a little worse than myself. Naraku then demonstrated to Kakashi how to solve the 4-image seal. Without any surprises, Kakashi still succeeded. But even so, Naraku did not let him try to seal the Sharingan directly, but asked him to practice it a few more times. After all, the stakes were high, and if he accidentally destroyed the Sharingan, it would be more than worth the loss after all. If you want to deal with Uchiha Obito in the future, you will still need this Sharingan, which also possesses divine power, but the chance of that happening is very small, almost impossible. Before this, Naraku had tried several times with his own eyes, but had successfully sealed them. Brother K doesn't need to seal the entire Sharingan. He only needs to seal the nerves connected to the Sharingan. That's it, just like this. After Kakashi practiced it several times, Naraku personally demonstrated it to him. The process of sealing the Sharingan. I saw Naraku quickly forming seals with his hands, completing the seal almost instantly. He placed his hand on his left eye, and then a black whirlpool technique appeared and slowly flowed into the eye. That's it. Kakashi noticed that Naraku's left eye slowly lost its luster, as if it were a piece of jewelry. The next step is to lift the seal, Naraku said. The 4-elephant seal is released. As he placed his hand on his left eye again, the black whirlpool technique slowly emerged, and then with a slight twist of his wrist, the whirlpool technique was opened like a revolving door. Then his left eye returned to normal again. Although the whole process seems very easy, this is all because Naraku is proficient in the sealing technique. In fact, he can easily help Kakashi seal the Sharingan, but that would be very troublesome. After all, the two of them are not together all the time. At this stage, most of Kakashi's attacks still rely on the Sharingan. Only by letting him master the 4-image seal proficiently can he be foolproof, so that he can lift the seal at any time when needed. It's your turn, Brother K. Okay. Kakashi nodded. Abato, Rin, I will protect everything now. Kakashi's eyes were firm, and then he began to form seals with his hands. 4-elephant seal. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Kakashi, you are a bit fierce today. Hokage's office. The 3rd generation sitting at the desk was puffing away while processing the documents on the desk. Boom. Boom. There was a knock on the door, and Sunday said without raising his head, "Come in." Squeak. With silver hair, a black mask, and a diagonal forehead protector covering his left eye, the person who came was none other than Kakashi. It's Kakashi. Is the mission accomplished, Hokage-sama? Kakashi was still very respectful when facing the 3rd generation. As he approached, he knelt on one knee and handed the 3rd generation a scroll, which contained information about the land of snow. Okay, thank you for your hard work. Let's go back and rest first. Yes. Then Kakashi left here. As for Naraku, after returning to the village, he went directly to Konoha Hospital. After visiting Kushina, he lay on the bed and rested. His young body was exhausted from running around for several days. It would be better to leave the task reporting to Kakashi alone. He didn't want to see the 3rd generation anyway. Kakashi here had just walked out of the Hokage building and was about to go home to rest when a familiar figure stopped him. Hey, isn't this my lifelong rival Kakashi? Let's have a youthful duel. Kakashi rolled his eyes helplessly. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked away faster and faster, as if he was running away. As expected of you, Kakashi, you are going to have a speed competition with me. There was a youthful fire in K's eyes. I will not lose to you, Kakashi. Then he exerted force with his feet, and his whole body turned into a green shadow and quickly chased Kakashi. Soon, with K's efforts, the distance between him and Kakashi became closer and closer, and he was about to catch up with Kakashi at the moment. Kakashi suddenly turned around, and when K saw this, he kicked his feet to the ground and stopped like a car. K, let's have a real showdown, Kakashi said seriously. A duel isn't about speed, K said with a confused look on his face. But for him, he will never refuse, no matter what kind of duel. Yoshi, come on, Kakashi, it is good. Then, the two of them came to the training ground in the village and started a real showdown. Originally, Kakashi was not prepared to spar with K, but now he changed his mind. Feeling the chakra filling his body, a smile appeared on Kakashi's lips. K, the person I'm now is the real me. Kakashi. Although Kakashi always wore a mask, K still noticed something was wrong. He felt that Kakashi was a little different now than before. Careful, K. At this moment, Kakashi suddenly spoke, and then K could no longer see his figure. The next moment, he only felt the air in front of him fluctuate violently, and with it, a black shadow appeared in front of his eyes. K didn't have time to think too much. He exerted force with his right leg and struck out with Konoha Tornado Boom. There was a wave of air, and K's attack on the field was blocked by Kakashi with his arm. As expected of you, K. But this is just the beginning. Light blue chakra suddenly appeared on his arm, and then Kakashi exerted force, grabbed K's right leg with his backhand, then rotated his waist to exert force, and was about to slam the opponent. Fly out. As the #1 person in physical arts, our Emperor K would naturally not be so temperamental. Gai stood on one foot, fell backwards, and kicked Kakashi's arm with his left leg. Seeing this, Kakashi could only let go of his hand, and took a step back to avoid K's attack. Art fire escape ho fireball. Almost instantly, Kakashi completed the seal, opened his mouth and spit out a huge fireball. Wind escape, a big breakthrough. Just as the fireball rushed forward, he completed another ninjutsu again, and a fierce wind blow on the fireball point. Wind helps the fire point. The fireball became more fierce, and rushed towards K on the opposite side point. A wave of heat hit his face. K's eyes became serious, and then his legs suddenly exerted force. Konoha's strong force whirlwind. K's legs were like real sharp axes, splitting the fireball in half from the middle, and then he rushed towards Kakashi at high speed. Earth escape. Huangquan Marsh. Suddenly Kakashi shouted, and then slapped his palm on the ground. Rumble. Instantly, the surrounding ground began to roll, and then became like a real swamp. K didn't dare to be careless about this. Light blue chakra emerged from his feet. Although chakra alone could not stand on the swamp, it could give him some strength point in just 2 big steps. His figure had already appeared in front of Kakashi, and his whip-like axe-like legs whipped hard towards Kakashi. Kakashi didn't react in time to this, and he was kicked backwards quickly. Boom. Suddenly, Kakashi in the air turned into a burst of smoke, and a piece of wood fell to the ground. Fire. Escape. The art of the powerful fire dragon. Kakashi's voice came again not far away, and with it came a huge fire dragon. The crimson flames rolled towards K, the flames dancing like a furious dragon. K was a little confused at this time. He and Kakashi usually had a lot of discussions, but Kakashi's state at that time was not like what he is today. Kakashi, you are a bit fierce today. If that's the case, then I have to get serious. K's eyes flashed with a blue flame. Open the door. Close the door. Open the door to live. Light. Green energy emerged around K's body, and his short black hair rose without wind. Then K turned into a green shadow, and rushed directly towards the fire dragon. The huge fire dragon seemed like a virtual object in front of him. It's too big, Kakashi exclaimed as he watched Gai pass through the fire dragon intact. Originally, he just wanted to test his current strength. In addition, he suddenly had a lot more chakra, and used a few more ninjutsu. Unexpectedly, K even used the 8-gate dungeon. If that's the case, then let's fight. A blue electric arc emerged on Kakashi's body, and he used the Chidori style again. But what was different from the last time was that the amount of chakra in his body was still sufficient. Boom, boom, boom. The two started a physical battle, and for a while there were continuous explosions on the field. Life, 2 figures, one green and one blue, kept colliding. Ha 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 ha, until dusk. Both of them fell to the ground gasping for air. Kakashi felt very relaxed at this time. Ever since Obito Sharingan was installed in his left eye, he had never fought like this again. Teacher, I may have to find my own way. Chapter 36 Signing the Succession Document. Konoha Hospital. In the early morning, Naraku came to Kushina's ward yawning. He had slept until now, since returning to the village yesterday. In fact, with his Uzumaki clan's physique, the physical fatigue was almost negligible. He just simply wanted to take a nap. Like last time, Naraku opened Kaguya's inner eye again to observe Kushina's condition, and found that except for a slight increase in the chakra in her body, there were no other changes. Ugh. Naraku sighed softly. He also knew that he was a little impatient. Although Tsunade said that Kushina would wake up soon, but now it seems that this will take some time. After staying in Kushina's bed for a while, Naraku left the hospital. This time, Naraku didn't find Genbu near the hospital. After he came back, he knew that it was the 3rd generation that had played a role. Walking on the streets of Konoha, although it was early in the morning, people were already coming and going on the streets, and various shops on both sides of the streets had begun to open for business one after another in the entire ninja world. It is estimated that only Konoha can have such a scene point during these 2 missions. Naraku also saw what other countries looked like. Whether it was the country of snow or the country of wind, they were incomparable to Konoha in any aspect. However, it is precisely because of the prosperity of Konoha that people from other ninja villages covet it. Every time there is a war, Konoha will be united by other ninja villages to target it. Every husband is not guilty, and he is guilty of his crime. From the perspective of other ninja villages, there is nothing wrong with this. They just want to have a good living environment. Naraku shook his head slightly. These things are not something he can consider now. Now he just wants to improve his strength quickly and protect the people he cares about. He will talk about the future things later. As he walked, Naraku smelled a familiar smell. The door of one of his stores had been opened, and a business sign was hung. It was Ichiraku Ramen. The hand-beating uncle is still very diligent. Naraku smiled slightly, and then walked into the hotel. Oh, it's Naraku. It's so early today. Xiao, who squinted his eyes, smiled after seeing Naraku. It's too early to hit uncle with your hands. Because they frequent Ichiraku Ramen, they are very familiar with it. However, at this time, you may have to wait a little longer. It's okay. In order to taste the delicious food, it doesn't matter if you wait a while. Okay, let's have the signature ramen as before. Naraku nodded. Yes, it's still the signature ramen. In fact, I was told that I had to wait a little longer, which was about 10 minutes, and Tate came over with a bowl of steaming ramen. The signature ramen is here. Please use it slowly. Thank you. Naraku's appetite suddenly increased as he looked at the fragrant ramen, and then he couldn't wait to start enjoying the food. A hidden corner of Konoha Village Point. Although the sun has risen and begun to shine on the earth, the light here is still very dim, with only a few weak beams of light used for illumination point roots. A tissue that takes root in the dark point at this time. A man with half of his body wrapped in white bandages was standing here. His sinister eyes revealing a hint of ferocity. Point next to him stood several people wearing masks. They were all root ninjas. At this time, they all knelt on one knee and lowered their heads, waiting for Danzo's order. Hiruzen. Danzo thought to himself, I want you to know that Konoha does not belong to you alone. Then he said, tomorrow the third Hokage will go to the damning mansion to sign the documents for his renewal as Hokage. The decline of the village is all caused by him, so he must not be allowed to continue to be the Hokage. Danzo said coldly. Yes, the few people kneeling on the ground were like machines without emotions. Even if it was the task of assassinating Hokage, they accepted it without any hesitation. Danzo nodded with satisfaction, then waved his hand to signal these people to retreat. Point for a moment, the dark room fell into silence again. Haha, Danzo-sama, a sneer suddenly came. You don't really think that just those few people can kill the teacher, HMPH, or Ichimaru? You don't have to worry about these things, Danzo said coldly to the front. Are you ready for my things? Haha, since it is something Danzo-sama wants, it must be prepared as soon as possible. As he finished speaking, a figure walked over from the darkness. With a cold expression and pale golden pupils, it was none other than Orochimaru, one of the three ninjas. Then he reached out and handed Danzo a scroll. In the Hokage's office. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to the damning mansion to sign the paperwork to succeed the Hokage. Sanday's hoarse voice came out as he looked at the scroll in his hand. Yes, Hokage-sama, news has been sent from the damning mansion. The daming has prepared everything and is waiting for you to come over. Okay, I understand. Sanday nodded. It's the succession document. Forget it. Let's go for a while. I happen to have other things to discuss with the daimyo. In fact, the third generation didn't care at all about this kind of succession document. His ability to stay in the position of Hokage for such a long time was not only due to the support of the daimyo. Point, however, some things still require a process. Go, Kaka. Sanday suddenly spoke, but stopped mid-sentence. He just remembered that Kakashi asked him for leave this morning, saying that there was something wrong with his practice point. Although the third generation was reluctant to part with such a useful person, he still agreed for long-term considerations. After all, Kakashi's strength also affected his power. Go and call Naraku Uzumaki. Then he thought for a moment and spoke again. Yes. 10 minutes later, Naraku's figure appeared in the Hokage's office. Sandaime-sama, you are looking for me, Naraku said, lowering his head slightly. Naraku, tomorrow I'm going to the damning mansion to sign the succession documents. You can be my guard. Naraku was slightly startled when he heard this. He felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. Ming Mansion, successor document, guard. Could it be that Danzo was the third generation who sent someone to assassinate him at this time? Naraku guessed in his mind. What's wrong, Naraku? Don't you want to? Sanday's hoarse voice sounded again. No. Naraku shook his head slightly. After much hesitation, he decided not to tell the third generation that someone would assassinate him tomorrow. It was not that he wanted anything to happen to the third generation, but that he knew that, just by relying on the few minions at the root, he would not be able to do anything. It cannot cause any harm to the third generation. Chapter 37 Future Greening Master. Sanday didn't say anything after seeing Naraku agreeing. In fact, he said he was looking for a guard, which was just a show point at this time. The third generation was still very confident in his own strength point. Naraku then left the office, but at this time he felt a little strange. He remembered that the plot in the original work did not develop like this. The plot in the original work seems to be that Kakashi went to the damning mansion disguised as the third generation and was ambushed by the roots on the way. It doesn't matter. Naraku shook his head. This change in the plot doesn't matter to him, and it doesn't even matter if someone from the root comes to assassinate the third generation tomorrow. After all, the third generation's shadow level strength is there. Looking at the entire ninja world at this time, there are not many people who can easily kill the third generation. The next day, Naraku, dressed as an Anbu, came to the Hokage's office early to wait. After a while, Sanday came with a few people, and then they started to set off. In addition to Naraku, there were two Anbu who followed the third generation to the damning mansion this time. Naraku couldn't tell their identities because they were wearing masks. Damning mansion is still some distance away from Konoha village, so in order to rush for time, several people accelerated their progress. After leaving Konoha village, soon they had walked more than half of the way. Nothing unusual happened during this period, and there were only some birdsong in the woods. Did Danzo give up on the assassination? Naraku thought to himself. But he rejected this idea the next moment. In front of them, three masked people blocked their way. Who are you? The Anbu next to Naraku said loudly as he took a step forward and stood in front of the third generation. However, the three people on the opposite side obviously had no intention of negotiating and immediately launched an offensive. Seeing this, the two Anbu, except Naraku, stopped saying anything and started fighting with several people with short blades in hand. Then the two Anbu were led away by the three men. At this time, Naraku took the opportunity to look at the third generation's face and found that the other party's face was a bit ugly. Did he already know the identities of those people? Naraku thought to himself. Naraku's guess was correct. Although the third generation did not recognize the identities of those people, he also guessed something in his heart. Since the other party could accurately ambush here, he must have obtained his movements in advance. But the third generation is the Hokage after all, and any whereabouts about him are the secrets of the village. Therefore, the people who can accurately grasp his movements must be the higher-ups of the village. If we continue to dig deeper, only Danzo has the ability and the idea to do such a thing. However, compared to pursuing Danzo, it was obviously more important to sign the renewal document at this time. The third generation was preparing to call Naraku to continue on his way. Suddenly, as if he sensed something, he raised his head and looked forward. I saw a young man wearing a mask standing in front, looking at the third generation with slightly hesitant eyes. We're finally here, Master Greening. Naraku ducked and stood in front of Sanday. Yes, the one in front of him is Yamato, who can use the wood release ninjutsu. Wood release, the art of big trees. Suddenly, Yamato on the other side quickly formed seals with his hands, and then dozens of pieces of wood stretched out from his arms and swept toward Naraku. Mutant, how could this happen? The third generation behind Naraku was stunned for a moment after seeing this move. Art. Fire escape. Oh, fireball. Naraku didn't think too much and opened his mouth to spit out a huge fireball. The scorching heat instantly ignited the wood. Although the wood release was very strong, it still had to be divided. It was obvious that Yamato on the opposite side was not good enough. His wood release, which can only do greening, is not enough for Naraku. Just after the huge fireball ignited the wood, Naraku disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, the silver short blade was already on Yamato's neck. "Naraku," Sandai suddenly said. Naraku understood what he meant. It was just to save Yamato's life. After all, for Konoha, wooden release ninjutsu has special significance. But he didn't need to remind him that Naraku had no intention of killing Yamato. He was also very curious about the wood release ninjutsu. Yamato's voice was trembling a little, and the coolness on his neck made him dare not act rashly, but at the same time, he felt a sense of joy and relief in his heart. He originally had some struggles in his heart about the task of assassinating Hokage, but he had to obey Danzo's order. Now this result is acceptable to him, even if he loses his life. Yamato also loves Konoha village very much, and he doesn't want the village to lose 3 generations. Boom. In order to prevent Yamato from doing something bad again, Naraku knocked him out with a sword. Aha. At this moment, the two Anbu who had just been led away returned here. Lord Hokage, they escaped. The third generation waved his hands casually, then he glanced at Yamato who was knocked unconscious by Naraku, and spoke. "Let's go to Damning Mansion first." "Yes." Naraku then handed Yamato to one of the Anbu, and they continued on their way. After all, Naraku is only 7 years old now, and his body is still very weak compared to adults. If he takes Yamato on the road, it will still have some influence. Soon the third generation entered the Damning Mansion with 2 Anbu. As for Naraku, he found a secret place and stayed to guard Yamato. Well, at this moment, Yamato, who had fainted, slowly opened his eyes, and the discomfort coming from his neck made him cry out in pain. "Here it is." After regaining consciousness slightly, Yamato immediately became vigilant and alert. His eyes looked around. "Don't look, I'm behind you." At this moment, Naraku, who was leaning against a big tree, spoke. Upon hearing this, Yamato quickly turned around and assumed a fighting stance. "It's you." He remembered that it was Naraku who knocked him out. "Why, you still want to have a fight?" Naraku said with a playful smile. Look at each other. Yamato thought about this for a while and finally gave up. He had realized the gap between the two. "Why? Didn't you kill me just now?" After hesitating, Yamato asked. For him who grew up in the roots, the world of ninjas is full of killing, and most of the tasks they perform are killing. "Kill you?" Naraku shook his head slightly. "The village will need you in the future." Naraku thought of the 9 tails in Naruto's body. If Ashura's reincarnation was unreliable, then Naruto might still use Yamato's would release in the future. Maybe the odds are not high, but even then, a future landscaping master is pretty good. Chapter 38 Naraku gets promoted. Not long after Naraku and the others waited here, Sandai rushed over with the 2 Anbu. "I actually woke up." After one of the Anbu saw Yamato waking up, he hurriedly stepped forward and prepared to control him. However, Sandai stopped him with his hand. "Hokage-sama." The Anbu was a little confused. "Go back to the village first," Sandai said without explaining anything, just asking everyone to return to the village first. Anbu didn't say much about this. Anbu was absolutely loyal to the third generation of Hokage. The group then began to return to Konoha. The 2 Anbu walked at the front. The Sandai and Yamato walked side by side, while Naraku stood at the back. Because they were attacked when they arrived, the 2 Anbu were very alert this time, and did not dare to relax. Naraku could only say that they were worrying too much. This was indeed the case. The journey back was uneventful, and there were no surprises until they stood in front of the gate of Konoha village. After entering Konoha village, Naraku said hello to the third generation and ran away. He felt every uncomfortable moment with people like the third generation. Sandai didn't say anything to this, nodded and let him go. In the Hokage's office, the third generation looked at Yamato in silence, not knowing what he was thinking. Squeak. At this moment, the office door was opened. "Hiruzen, what do you want from me?" Danzo's voice came. "Lord Danzo." Yamato's body trembled slightly when he heard this familiar voice. For Danzo, he is still very afraid of him now. After all, he is still controlled by the other party using tongue root seal of disaster. When Danzo, who had just come in, saw Yamato, his eyes trembled inadvertently, but he was not too surprised. After all, this scene was also part of his plan. "You go out first," Danzo said coldly to Yamato. Yamato hesitated a little when he heard this, but finally he raised his head and looked at Sunday. Danzo suddenly felt extremely angry when he saw that I dared to disobey his order. You go out first. At this moment, the third generation nodded and motioned for Yamato to go out first. Yes, Yamato first bowed to the third generation, then bowed to Danzo, and then walked out of the room. The third generation in the room made a gesture in the air, and then he looked at Danzo with a serious face, waiting for the other party to give him an explanation. Danzo, as if he had already prepared it, took out a scroll from his arms and handed it to him. After reading the content on the scroll, the heavy expression on the third generation's face disappeared, replaced by a look of disappointment, and even his eyes dimmed a bit. Hiruzen, or Orochimaru, as your disciple, actually did such a thing in the village. Don't you, the Hokage, have no responsibility at all? It's all your responsibility that Konoha is like this now. Danzo on the side said his prepared words. Abdent, Hiruzen. Danzo shouted loudly. Boom. That's enough. At this moment, Sunday slammed the table and stood up, causing the air around him to vibrate slightly. Unlock that voice seal, Sunday said in a tone that could not be refused. You, Hiruzen, I said, unlock that voice seal. Looking at the slightly older face of the third generation, Danzo finally gave in. With a bang, he slammed the door and walked out. Yamato outside the door was pinched by Danzo's neck before he could even react. Cough. Cough. Just when Yamato felt like he was about to suffocate, Danzo let go and left. Haha. Yamato lay on the ground gasping for air. At that moment, he really felt like he was going to die. Seal. Only then did Yamato realize that the seal that had been left on him seemed to be lifted. At this time, the third generation also walked out of the office, came to Yamato, and spoke to him. You should join Anbu first. Anbu. Yamato knelt down on one knee directly in front of the third generation without any hesitation. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Haha, you're welcome. The future of the village still lies in the hands of young people like you. Where the leaves are flying, the fire will continue to grow. The fire will continue to illuminate the village and let the new leaves in. The last 3 generations, Yamato was incorporated into Naraku's team, and Naraku was also promoted to the Anbu team leader, replacing Shisu's position, while Shisu had a new mission. But at this time, Naraku didn't know that he had been promoted. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. For him, any position is meaningless. Even if he was given the position of Hokage, he might not be able to do it. You're not at home? Naraku frowned slightly and looked at the closed door in front of him. Above the gate are written the characters Hatake House. After being separated from the third generation and the others, Naraku came here to find Kakashi. He had a few ninjutsu that he wanted to ask the other party for advice, but he didn't expect that Kakashi was not at home. Did he go on a mission again? Naraku murmured, then turned and left. Naraku, who couldn't find Kakashi, came to the street again. He had been working as a guard for the third generation this day. He didn't eat much and was already hungry. Boss, please bring some meatballs, said a girl who looked to be 11 or 12 years old standing in front of a meatball shop on the side of the road. Well, it's Hongdao. You haven't been here for a long time. The boss was obviously very familiar with this person and quickly packed several meatballs for her. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been here, Anko thought to herself. Recently, she had just become a genin. She had been following her teammates on missions to find kittens all day long, and she spent much less time visiting the meatball shop. Not far away, Naraku also saw Anko, who was buying meatballs. Seeing Anko, Naraku thought of her teacher, Orochimaru. Naraku had always wanted to get in touch with this true genius among Hokage, but he didn't dare. He was afraid that the other party would dissect him accidentally. However, Naraku is not in a hurry. He knows that one day he will definitely find Orochimaru in person. The other party's incredible research ability will also be a big help for him to face Otsutsuki in the future. However, Orochimaru should be defecting at this time. Naraku, thinking this in his mind, stepped into a barbecue restaurant. The moon and stars were sparse, and the boundless night quickly covered the entire world. various glass bottles filled with liquids of various colors, as well as strange looking tools on the table. Boom. Just the next moment, all these things on the table disappeared. Heh, these should be about the same. He was wearing a kimono and his pale golden pupils exuded a cold aura. Chapter 39 S-Class Rebellious Ninja, Orochimaru. Looking at his extremely familiar laboratory, a trace of reluctance flashed through Orochimaru's cold pupils, but was soon replaced by a touch of madness again. What's the point of staying with Konoha that's already rotten? Don't you think so, teacher? Orochimaru suddenly turned his head and looked at the door of the research room. There was a thin-looking figure there. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised as he spoke, and his whole person exuded a cold aura. The thin figure took 2 steps forward. With the faint light in the room, it could be seen that this person was actually the 3rd generation. Orochimaru, don't you know that life is not allowed to be desecrated? I have told you a long time ago that some research cannot be carried out, but you actually did such a thing behind my back, the 3rd generation said with a look on his face. Sat. For a moment, he had denied himself in his heart whether he was a qualified Hokage and a qualified teacher, but this thought is only fleeting. Haha, isn't it too late now, teacher? Facing the 3rd generation's scolding, Orochimaru still had a sneer on his face. Seeing Orochimaru's attitude, the 3rd generation also lost the desire to continue preaching. His regretful eyes became firm, the surrounding air began to fluctuate, and the momentum of a shadow-level powerhouse exploded instantly. Necromancer, Ape Demon. After Sandai quickly formed a seal with his hands, he slapped his palm on the ground, and then a burst of white smoke appeared. After the smoke cleared, a strong white ape stood side by side with him. Hiruzen, you have finally made up your mind. The monkey demon seemed to know something, and was not surprised to see such a scene. King Khan Ruai stick. Then, the monkey demon transformed into an iron rod, and fell into the hands of the 3rd generation. Haha, it seems that a battle is unavoidable today. Orochimaru suddenly opened his mouth wide, and then he took out a long sword with mucus from his mouth. It is the Sochi sword, one of the 3 greatest artifacts in the ninja world. Light blue chakra instantly filled the entire sword body, and with a flick of Orochimaru's hand, a sharp blade struck hard at the 3rd generation. Sandai dodged the sword blade, and then the iron rod in his hand suddenly stretched out and stabbed Orochimaru directly. Clang. The collision between Kaozujian and the sword sparked a burst of sparks, and then the two started a fierce battle in this small space. Today's 3rd generation is not like the original. He still has very strong combat power. Even Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas, was suppressed by him. After a while, Orochimaru fell into a disadvantage and was seriously injured by the 3rd generation and fell to the ground. But in the end, the 3rd generation relented and let him go. Hiruzen, you can still suppress him now, but when you get older. The monkey demon didn't want to give up this opportunity and wanted to persuade the 3rd generation. You will regret it. Seeing that the 3rd generation was still unmoved, the monkey demon shook his head and turned into a puff of smoke. The last 3 generations looked at Orochimaru again with complicated eyes, then turned and left here. In Konoha Hospital, Naraku, who was sleeping soundly, opened his eyes suddenly and then disappeared from the room in a flash. Captain Naraku lives here. A young man wearing an Anbu uniform was standing in front of Naraku's door, just when he raised his hand to knock on the door. What are you doing here? A murderous voice sounded from behind him, and at the same time he felt a chill on his neck again. Yamato's body trembled slightly. Received notification from Hokage-sama, asking all Anbu to assemble. At this time, Naraku also recognized Yamato's identity, and then he took the kunai off the opponent's neck, but still looked at the opponent with vigilant eyes. If Yamato showed any abnormal behavior, he promised to let him see it. Not until tomorrow's sun. Naraku was not much surprised that Yamato suddenly transformed from a root to an Anbu. This was just expected for him who was familiar with the plot. Gather all the Anbu. What big thing happened in the village? Naraku frowned slightly, then pulled Yamato away from here. At this time, Yamato carefully touched his neck with a scared expression on his face. He felt that he was lucky enough to survive today. Hokage's office. By the time Naraku and Yamato arrived, there were already many people here, and without exception, they all wore masks. Soon the third generation wearing Hokage robes came over with a serious look on his face. Orochimaru defected to the village. The third generation just said one sentence, which made most people present feel incredible. In the eyes of most people, Orochimaru is not only a disciple of the third Hokage, but also a hero of Konoha. He is a person who made great contributions to the village during the Third Ninja War. Will such a person defect? Although many people were surprised, they firmly believed in the third generation's words. The purpose of Anbu was to obey the Hokage's orders. From now on, Orochimaru is listed as an S-class rebel ninja of the village. Now your mission is to chase Orochimaru. Orochimaru has mastered many secrets of the village. Once he successfully escapes, it will cause huge losses to the village, so you must bring him back. Yes, Hokage-sama. After receiving the order, all the Anbu disappeared in an instant. Only Sandai remained in the office with a complicated expression and he didn't know what he was thinking. Naraku rushed to the outside of Konoha village unhurriedly. He knew better than anyone else that the third generation was just asking everyone to chase Orochimaru for a show. After all, Orochimaru was one of the three ninjas and a proper shadow level powerhouse. If the third generation really wanted to take action against Orochimaru, he would have killed him as early as in the research room, but he still had to wait until now point, and even if all the Anbu were gathered together, one by one, it would not be enough to face Orochimaru at the same time. In today's Konoha, apart from the third generation and Anzo, the only one who can really compete with Orochimaru is Jiraiya, who is also a Sannin point. Of course, it would be okay if Tsunade overcame his hemophobia point. Since leaving Konoha village, Naraku has slowed down even more, making it look like a walk. Captain Naraku, aren't we going to chase Orochimaru? At this time, Yamato next to him spoke with doubts. At this time, he had just joined Anbu, and he had just been brainwashed by the third generation during the day, so he carried out the orders of the third generation unconditionally. Naraku held his forehead and looked at his only subordinate. He had just learned about his promotion from Yamato's mouth. As long as you follow me, you don't need to think about anything else. Following you, Captain Naraku, have you discovered Orochimaru's traces? Chapter 40. What a bad luck. Outside Konoha village, after a friendly exchange with Yamato, this guy finally figured it out. At least he would stop clamoring about looking for Orochimaru point. Although Naraku was not going to chase Orochimaru, he still had to do some things. If he was really caught fishing, the third generation would not be able to explain it. Naraku and Yamato searched slowly in the woods. Naraku yawned, thinking about Konoha's current situation. After Orochimaru defected, Konoha's strength undoubtedly dropped a bit. Except for Danzo, who was hiding in the dark, there was only one shadow level powerhouse in the entire Konoha for 3 generations. But the good thing is that the current ninja world is in a period of peace. Although there are still some frictions between several ninja villages, they are just some trials at most. A major war will not happen for the time being. Therefore, there is plenty of time left for Konoha. In a few years, this generation of Kakashi and Gai will grow up, and then Konoha's power will slowly recover. Suddenly, Naraku seemed to sense something, and became alert instantly, taking back the step he took. What's wrong, Captain Naraku? Yamato behind him was a little confused. Naraku didn't speak, just stared at the grass in front of him. You are really unlucky. What? Naraku said nothing more, because in front of him, a figure came out of the grass. The narrow eyes and pale golden pupils were none other than Orochimaru the Cold Lord, one of the 3 ninjas who were the target of their mission. Well, Naraku, Uzumaki, and Orochimaru looked at the two of them with a sinister smile on his face, but when his eyes fell on Yamato, he trembled twice unnoticeably. Naraku was not surprised that Orochimaru could recognize his identity. In terms of seniority, Orochimaru was still his uncle. As Jiraiya's apprentice, they had met each other several times. Of course, every time Naraku saw Orochimaru, someone else was always there. Looking at Orochimaru, Naraku felt that he was like a poisonous python, exuding a cold aura. Maybe it's because newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. At this moment, Yamato performed much better than Naraku. He took a step forward with a short blade in hand and said, Orochimaru, the S-class traitor of the village, please follow me back to the village to accept punishment. Naraku was stunned. He really didn't expect this future greening master to be so aggressive. It wasn't until later that Naraku figured out that no normal person would dare to assassinate Naruto alone. Go back and accept the punishment. Haha. Orochimaru didn't he seem angry when he heard Yamato's words. He just said with a sneer, "How are you going to take me back, Yamato?" Still didn't see the situation clearly. Just when he was about to take a step forward to attack Orochimaru, Naraku reached out and held him. Shianzang, be honest. Then he pulled Yamato behind him and said to Orochimaru, "Uncle, it's been a long time." The reason why he pulled Yamato behind him was not because Naraku wanted to protect him, but because he was afraid that after Yamato angered Orochimaru, the other party would accidentally kill them both. Although Yamato couldn't understand this, Naraku was his boss after all, and he didn't dare to disobey orders. "Uncle, let me test whether you have made any progress recently, Naraku." Orochimaru chuckled, and then a cold aura burst out from him. The two of them, Naraku, instantly felt a strong pressure. This is the strength of a cage-level warrior. His aura alone can intimidate an average Jounin, Naraku said with sweat dripping down his face. Under the pressure of this momentum, Yamato took several steps back, his body swayed, and he almost fell to the ground. He didn't realize how powerful Orochimaru was until this moment. Thinking of what he had just done, he touched his neck again. Boom. Light blue chakra instantly filled the whole body, and with Naraku's explosion, the pressure instantly decreased a lot. It seems that he has made some progress. After seeing Naraku break free from the pressure of his momentum, Orochimaru smiled. Those who didn't know thought he was very happy. At such a young age, you have the strength of a Jounin. You are much stronger than that guy Jiraiya. Let me see how far you have grown now. In an instant, Orochimaru's aura surged. Naraku felt as if he was facing a ferocious snake, and that he was just the snake's meal. Boom. Yamato behind him finally couldn't resist the pressure and fainted. Vajra chain faced with this pressure, Naraku took the lead to take action. He was afraid that if he didn't take action, he would not have the chance to take action later. Two pale golden chains stretched out from Naraku's back, and the golden chains tore through the air and rushed towards Orochimaru. Interesting. Orochimaru just turned sideways to avoid Naraku's attack. Then he stretched out a hand and held the chain directly in his hand. The next moment, with a bang, the chain formed by chakra was crushed by him. Naraku was not surprised by this. In the final analysis, the golden chain was only formed by his chakra. Although he now has a large amount of chakra, in terms of control and use of chakra, he is not as good as a shadow level powerhouse like Orochimaru. It's incomparable, but the diamond chain will not be destroyed like this. The next moment, I saw that the chains that Orochimaru had just crushed were restored again, and the two chains were like long whips, whipping towards Orochimaru. "That's all you have?" Orochimaru saw this scene and shook his head slightly, as if he was disappointed. He just waved his hand, and two pythons sprang out from his sleeves. The pythons opened their mouths, and the fangs in their mouths shone with cold light. Then the python became entangled with the chain. Fire release, a powerful fireball technique. Naraku saw this, and was not idle. He opened his mouth and spat out a huge fireball, and rushed forward at high speed. The fireball burned the air, emitting a scorching heat. Wind. Escape. Great breakthrough. Orochimaru opened his mouth and spit out a violent whirlwind, and the huge fireball was blown away. After the whirlwind dispersed the fireball, it still did not dissipate, and continued to attack Naraku. Ninjutsu. Needle Jizo. Naraku didn't dare to be careless at all. Quickly formed seals with his hands, and used another ninjutsu. The long red hair grew rapidly, and surrounded Naraku in the blink of an eye. With the blessing of chakra, these hairs were as hard as steel, and the whirlwind made a banging sound when it fell on it. Kagura's eyes open. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Naraku opened Kagura's inner eye, and his perception was magnified several times in an instant. Just the next moment, his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 41 Battle with Orochimaru. Outside Konoha village. Clang. There was a spark of metal collision. Oh, not bad. Orochimaru looked at the broken kunai in his hand, his pale golden pupils showing a hint of excitement. The elongated red hair slowly disappeared, and Naraku's the figure appeared again. At this time, his face looked the color of bitter melon. After opening Kaguya's inner eye, he could feel the powerful energy contained in Orochimaru's body. For him now, it was almost an insurmountable mountain. The Uzumaki clan. Haha, such an interesting race. It's a pity that they were wiped out. Orochimaru chuckled, always maintaining a cold smile on his face. Hidden shadow snake hand. Suddenly, Orochimaru flicked his right hand, and in an instant, more than a dozen venomous snakes sprang out from his sleeves. Hiss, hiss. These poisonous snakes all opened their mouths and bit at Naraku. Wind. Escape. Windblade. Naraku kicked the ground, and took a step back, then quickly formed seals with his hands, and a windblade like a crescent struck forward fiercely. Bang bang bang. The poisonous snakes struck by the windblade all turned into a puff of smoke and dissipated. My nephew is still very powerful. Seeing that his offensive was broken by Naraku, the smile on Orochimaru's face became even colder. He looked at Naraku's body carefully, as if admiring his prey. Uncle, that's almost enough. My nephew won't be able to stand it anymore. At this time, Naraku's face looked bitter. Why didn't Mr. Jiraiya come back? At this time, Naraku thought of Jiraiya. He remembered that Jiraiya was in the village when Orochimaru defected in the original work. It seems that something has changed. Naraku thought to himself. Naraku thought carefully about the current situation and how to get out of it. As for Orochimaru, Naraku couldn't guess what the other party was going to do. He didn't think that the other party would let him go because of Jiraiya. But it won't necessarily kill him. It's really troublesome. Time is running out. Nephew, let me see your true strength, Orochimaru murmured, and his figure disappeared in the next second. No, Naraku's pupils shrank. Although he could sense Orochimaru's position after opening Kaguya's inner eye, his body couldn't keep up with the opponent's speed. Boom. As soon as Naraku made a move, Orochimaru's fist fell on him. In an instant, Naraku felt a huge force coming from him, and his body flew backwards uncontrollably. At this moment, Orochimaru truly showed his cage-level strength. Even the physical skills he was not good at were equally powerful. Naraku's body fell back a few meters. When he finally stabilized his body, Orochimaru had already launched his second offensive. Evil snake wrist explosion. A burst of smoke instantly appeared on the field, and then several giant snakes surrounded Naraku. At this moment, the hair on Naraku's body stood on end, and he couldn't care about anything else. The two pale golden chains behind his back were supported on the ground. With the support of the chains, Naraku's whole body quickly jumped into the air. Burst. Orochimaru shouted lowly. A nervous look appeared on Naraku's face, and a large amount of chakra surged towards the chain. The next moment, a third chain sprang out from his back. With the addition of another chain, the speed of his ascent increased a lot again. Boom. Huge roars sounded, and Naraku's the next moment, Yamato's body flew out like a sandbag. Ignoring Yamato, Orochimaru looked up into the air. At this time, the sound of the explosion had disappeared, but Naraku's figure had disappeared. Suddenly, Orochimaru seemed to sense something. He lowered his head and looked at his feet. A pair of arms stretched out from the ground and grabbed his ankles. It was Naraku. In fact, because he was in the air, he did not suffer much damage. On the contrary, he used the fluctuations caused by the explosion to cover up his figure and took the opportunity to sneak to the ground. The next moment, Naraku exerted force and pulled Orochimaru's body to the ground, and the solid soil bound his body. Fire escape. Fire dragon flame bullet. Naraku seized the opportunity and released a powerful ninjutsu again. A huge fireball erupted from Naraku's mouth, and the hot flames burned the air, making a crackling sound. Boom. The flames hit the position where Orochimaru was, and a huge pit instantly appeared on the ground. A charred body lay quietly in the pit, but the next moment the body gradually turned into a ball of black scorched earth. Sure enough, he used his earth clone to escape. Naraku was not surprised. How could Orochimaru, a shadow-level warrior, be solved by him like this? Naraku closed his eyes and carefully sensed Orochimaru's position. After a long time, he frowned slightly, and then he opened his eyes full of doubts. You've already left here. Naraku was a little surprised as to why Orochimaru wanted to retreat. He didn't think that the other party escaped because he was afraid of his own strength. Captain Naraku. At this time, Yamato's voice sounded behind him, and Naraku turned around and saw him walking towards him, covering his shoulders. Forget it. Naraku, who really couldn't figure it out, shook his head slightly. Orochimaru's departure was a good thing for him. Then Naraku and the two left here. In a hidden cave, Orochimaru suddenly opened his eyes while he was closing them. Oh, Uzumaki Naraku, and that failed test subject. Orochimaru's eyes flashed with cold light. It's really interesting. The next day, Hokage's officer and Boo who went to pursue Orochimaru came back here one by one to return their lives to the third generation, but without exception they all failed. Sandai didn't say anything about this. These were all within his expectations. After receiving the Anbu's mission report, the third generation let them all go out to do their own things. As for the task of chasing Orochimaru, the third generation openly assigned him to Jiraiya who was traveling abroad. After everyone left, Sandai began to check the information handed over by the Anbu. Most people's reports were basically the same, that they had not encountered Orochimaru. The third generation nodded secretly. Regardless of whether these mission reports were true or false, they were all what he wanted to see. But the next moment his pupils trembled, and his face was full of surprise. Go and call Shianzang over. A hoarse voice sounded in the room. Tenzo is Yamato's code name in Anbu. Basically, every Anbu personnel does not use their real name when performing tasks. Not long after, Yamato wearing a mask came to the office. Yamato then reported everything to the third generation about their encounter with Orochimaru. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Enhanced Chakra Control. On the Hokage Rock, Naraku stood on top of the third generation and looked at the entire village. I don't know why. During the period when Minato died and Kushina was in coma, Naraku always liked to come here to stop when he had nothing to do. Maybe he wanted to see the scenery, or maybe it was for other reasons. Hey, Naraku. At this moment, Naraku suddenly heard a familiar voice. He looked up and saw a green figure standing on the top of the opposite mountain waving to him. Brother, K. Naraku also smiled when he saw the person coming. Then he flashed and was standing next to K in a moment. Yo, Z. Naraku, let's have a youth showdown. K said happily. When he saw Naraku, he thought of Kakashi. At this time, a week had passed since the day Orochimaru defected. During this period, K had not seen Kakashi once. Kakashi, this guy's really busy. K couldn't he help but said to Naraku, Kakashi, maybe. Thinking of Kakashi, Naraku smiled. He knew a little more than K. Kakashi had visited him just 2 days ago. He said that he had taken a long vacation and might not appear in the village again in a short time. As for what he was going to do specifically, Kakashi didn't say anything, only that he would be given a surprise when the time came. Naraku felt very good about this. Since Minato's death, Kakashi and the Anbu has been on constant missions and has basically not had much rest in the past 2 years. The non-stop tasks caused him to waste a lot of time in training. You must know that Kakashi is only a teenager now and is in the explosive period of strength growth. In the original work, Kakashi's strength grows very slowly. On the one hand, it is due to the load brought by the Sharingan, and on the other hand, it is also related to his Anbu career in the past few years. It is obvious that Kakashi is aware of this now and has made changes. In addition, his Sharingan has been sealed. Naraku believes that Kakashi will become different from before. Later, Naraku and K came to the village's training ground. Being able to compete with a taijutsu expert like K will also help Naraku grow in strength. Be careful, Naraku, K warned, and then he moved and attacked Naraku. Konoha Whirlwind. K's right leg was slashing like a real sharp axe. Normally, Naraku would dodge this blow or use ninjutsu to force K back, but this time he used a new technique method of attack, Vajra Chain. Naraku formed a seal with his hands, and after a soft drink, 3 pale golden chains stretched out from his back. The fastest progress is to fight against the strong. This saying is not unreasonable. Naraku fought against Orochimaru before. Under that strong pressure, he made progress in all aspects. The most obvious one is that the number of diamond chains he can release has changed from 2 to 3. Kaguya is enlightened. Naraku, who opened Kaguya's inner eye, closed his eyes directly. Under his perception, K's movements were invisible. Click, click. The pale golden chains clanked. One of the chains was wrapped around K's attacking right leg, and the other 2 were heading towards K's body. Facing the attack of the chain, K didn't panic at all. He put his left foot on the ground and turned his whole body violently. With huge force, he broke free of the chain that was not completely tightened. Then K exerted force with both feet and retreated and disappeared land point. But the next moment, the 3 chains changed their directions at the same time and once again attacked K, who had just settled. Let me show you the speed of Konoha's blue beast. K opened his mouth and showed his shining white teeth. Then he moved to avoid the chain attack again and attacked Naraku. Naraku, on the other hand, kept manipulating the chains to entangle with K. Soon the battle turned into K constantly dodging the chains and trying to get close to Naraku, while Naraku kept manipulating the chains to intercept. Perhaps to cooperate with Naraku, or perhaps to exercise his reaction ability, K never launched an attack on the chain, but relied on his flexible body to avoid the entanglement of the chain. Gradually, Naraku became more and more proficient in the manipulation of the diamond chains, and now the cooperation between the 3 chains became more tacit. Under Naraku's control, the 3 chains continuously attacked K from 3 directions at this time. K's speed was getting faster and faster, almost turning into an afterimage. Even the combined attack of the 3 chains still couldn't touch the hem of K's clothes. When God closes a door for you, it will also open a window for you. That's the case with K. Although he can't use ninjutsu, he can definitely be called a taijutsu genius. Naraku knew that when K grew up, his taijutsu would be number 1 in the entire ninja world. There is K's unremitting efforts and a certain amount of talent. Just like Kakashi, if Jin has specialized in physical training like K since he was a child, his future achievements may not necessarily be higher than those of K. Sometimes, direction is greater than effort. Konoha Hospital. Naraku returned to the hospital covered in sweat. Although he was a little tired physically, Naraku's eyes were shining with dazzling light. Today's sparring session with K allowed him to discover a new training method. A method that can quickly increase his control over chakra. The diamond chain is a chain formed by chakra. Every time Naraku controls them, he feels no different from controlling chakra. In fact, there really isn't much difference between the 2. He discovered this during the sparring session with K today. At the beginning, he was still a little unfamiliar with controlling 3 chains at the same time. That is, his control of chakra was not strong enough. The diamond chain is a special ninjutsu that belongs exclusively to the Uzumaki clan. Kushina was able to suppress the Kyuubi because of this ninjutsu. Diamond chain has great potential. However, when Naraku returned to the hospital, he remembered that when he fought Orochimaru before, his diamond chain was directly crushed by the opponent's bare hands. He began to wonder why. A pale golden chain stretched out from his back, and then the chain floated in front of Naraku. Naraku looked at the chain carefully. Chakra, control. Naraku frowned slightly. He believed that the strength of the diamond chain was definitely more than this. Otherwise, how could Kushina use this to restrain the Nine Tails? Chakra, concentration. Suddenly, Naraku's eyes lit up. It's concentration. Since the diamond chain is composed of chakra, can compressing the concentration of chakra enhance the strength of the chain? Naraku did what he said and directly extended the chain by 5 meters under his control. Then he closed his eyes and opened Kaguya's heart eye. Only this time, he wasn't using it to sense others, but instead focused all his attention on the chain. Chapter 43 Rescue Mission, Kingdom of Frost. The sun slowly rose from the east, and the entire land began to be bathed in sunlight. Konoha Hospital. Although he didn't sleep all night, Naraku still looked very energetic at this time, with a smile on his face. The reason why Naraku is so happy is because after one night of experiments, he finally found a way to enhance the strength of the diamond chain. That's the concentration of compressed chakra. The diamond chain is originally formed by chakra. For example, if one card of chakra can be used to create a 10-meter long chain, then if the length of the chain is shortened, the chakra will remain unchanged. Naraku discovered that the strength of the chain would increase. After finding this reason, it will be much easier to solve the rest. After all, as a member of the Uzumaki clan, Naraku's most important thing is chakra. All that's left for him to do is to continue to exercise his control over chakra so that he can freely distribute the amount of chakra when using various ninjutsu. What? Naraku stood up and stretched himself, laughing. Just when he was about to catch up on some sleep, he asked, "Are you going to come back to work?" Naraku murmured, and then he opened the door and walked out. Naraku noticed that above the hospital, a figure dressed as an Anbu stood there. "It's you, Yamato." Naraku shook his head slightly. Because of Kushina's relationship, he set up many barriers in the hospital. As long as someone approaches here, he can basically sense it. He just detected it through the formation. To the breath of Yamato. Swish. In an instant, Naraku disappeared from the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already standing next to Yamato. "Captain Naraku, Lord Hokage asked us to come over," Yamato said respectfully when he saw Naraku. Yamato respects Naraku very much in his heart. Although he is even younger than himself, he is far ahead of him in terms of strength. At this time, Yamato has already regarded Naraku as the target of pursuit. Naraku was not surprised at all by Yamato's arrival. He knew that this was another new mission. Then the two of them came to the Hokage's office together. "Naraku, Tenzo, thank you for your hard work." After a while of greetings, the third generation handed them the scroll recording the mission. Then the two left here. "Go back and get ready. I'll see you at the entrance of the village in half an hour." Naraku said this to Yamato and disappeared in a flashpoint. Since he had to go out on a mission again, Naraku naturally had to go back to the hospital to prepare. At this time, Naraku thought of Shizu, who took him out on a mission for the first time. He had not seen him for a while, but Naraku had heard about several things in the past 2 days. The first was Orochimaru's defection. This incident also caused a wave of waves in Konoha, but under the third generation's single-handed operation, it quickly subsided. The second thing is that the Uchiha clan has another genius, Uchiha Itachi. With his outstanding strength, he joined Anbu at the age when he should have entered the ninja academy, and he also completed several missions with excellence. Even Naraku had heard about Itachi a few times in Anbu. In fact, Naraku and Itachi's experiences were somewhat similar. Neither of them went to the ninja academy, but directly joined the Anbu. However, the performance of the two is completely different. Although Naraku has completed several tasks outstandingly, he has always behaved very low-key, and even few people in the entire Konoha village know that he has joined the Anbu. Compared with him, Uchiha Itachi's name was very loud. Naraku knew that the Uchiha clan might be involved, but it was probably more the work behind Danzo and the third generation. The two geniuses of the Uchiha clan, Shizu and Itachi, are the two most sad characters in the original work. Naraku shook his head, and then his eyes flashed with an inexplicable meaning. Now all this can be changed, can't it? Soon Naraku came to the hospital again. This time Todaian seemed to be used to this kind of life. After Naraku channeled the spirit, Todaian lay down next to Kushina without saying a word, and then closed his eyes to sleep. Naraku was slightly surprised, but he didn't say anything. Todaian's move saved him from wasting his words. Then he checked the various barriers around the ward. After finding no problems, he left the place. After leaving two shadow clones behind. Konoha village entrance. After Naraku and Yamato gathered here, they set off together towards the outside of the village. This time their mission is to go to a place called the Kingdom of Frost. The Kingdom of Frost is located at the junction of the Kingdom of Fire and the Kingdom of Thunder. It is a very small country in itself, not even as big as the Kingdom of Snow. Because it is at the junction of two big countries. Every time a war breaks out between the Kingdom of Fire and the Kingdom of Thunder, the Kingdom of Frost will basically become the location of the battle. So now, basically all the locals in the Kingdom of Frost have moved to other places, and only a few people still stay there and continue to live. The main mission of Naraku and the others in going to the Kingdom of Frost this time is to rescue point. It turned out that Konoha had sent a 3-person team to the Kingdom of Frost some time ago to perform a mission. Because it was a long-term mission, those few people had not returned to the village for a long time, but basically they would deliver news to the village every few days. But recently, the village has not received a message from them for a long time. Judging from the past situation, those people must have had some accident, so Naraku and his wife were assigned this mission point. The day passed quickly, and until late at night, the two of them had not even completed half of the journey. Boom. Suddenly, a huge lightning flashed in the sky, and then a heavy rain fell from the sky. The sudden heavy rain also prevented the two from continuing on their way. Tenzo, it's your turn to perform. At this moment, Naraku turned to look at Yamato and said. Yamato was slightly startled when he heard this, but then he understood what Naraku meant. Wooden escape, the technique of the Four Pillars family. Yamato put his hands together, and there was a rumbling sound on the ground. Densely packed wood rose from the ground, and then these wood formed a room that could block the rain. Looking at Yamato's masterpiece in front of him, Naraku gave him a rare smile. You will be indispensable for the future construction of the village. Then, the two of them rested here for a while, and then they continued on their way until the rain stopped. It wasn't until the next night that the two of them stood at the border of the country of fire. One step forward, and they entered the territory of the Kingdom of Tang. As long as they passed through the entire Kingdom of Tang, they could enter the territory of the Kingdom of Frost. After spending another day and night like this, the two finally arrived at their destination, and arrived in the Kingdom of Frost. Chapter 44 Black and White Snakes, Masked Man. The Land of Frost. It wasn't until he came here that Naraku realized that this place was really small. Although it was a country, Naraku felt that the Kingdom of Frost might not be as big as the Leaf Village. Let's search separately first. Regardless of whether we find clues or not, we will gather here at night. Naraku turned to Yamato and said. Yamato nodded. Copy that, Captain Naraku. Then the two of them acted separately, and they began to search the Kingdom of Frost to see if there were any clues left by those people or any news about them. Maybe because the territory is too small, there are no ninja villages in the Kingdom of Frost, or there are no ninjas in their entire country. In the entire Kingdom of Frost, there is only one place called Frost Town, where people still live, and most of them are ordinary people. Naraku is now in Shuangzhen. He opened Kaguya's inner eye, and began to carefully sense the surroundings, hoping to find some clues. However, after wandering for a long time, he found nothing. In the state of Kaguya's inner eye, Naraku could clearly sense that he met someone in the town. They are all ordinary people. In this way, Naraku kept Kaguya's eyes open until he checked the entire town and then left point. But just when he left the town, Naraku suddenly felt a cold breath. Naraku turned around and saw that not far in front of him, there was a giant white python looking towards him with cold eyes. For just a moment, Naraku's heart suddenly started to ring with alarm. Orochimaru. Naraku's body tensed slightly, ready to retreat at any time. He felt Orochimaru's breath on the white snake. Even if Orochimaru is not nearby at this time, this big snake must be his psychic beast. After seeing the big white snake for the first time, Naraku felt the fluctuations of chakra in it, which showed that it must be a ninja beast. In the entire ninja world, only Orochimaru can summon a snake-shaped ninja beast at this stage. Hiss, hiss. The big white snake slowly spit out the letter, probably because it felt the strong chakra in Naraku's body, so it gave up its attack plan, and slowly retreated backwards, disappearing from Naraku's sight after a while. After the white snake left, Naraku felt a little strange. He couldn't figure out why Orochimaru's psychic beast appeared here. Before he figured it out, he decided not to alert the snake. Shadow. Clone technique. Boom. After a burst of white smoke dissipated, Naraku's shadow clone stood in front of him, and then Naraku signaled the shadow clone to quietly follow the big white snake. He always felt that this mission might have something to do with Orochimaru. After leaving here, Naraku returned to the place he agreed with Yamato. After arriving here, Yamato was not here, and Naraku didn't care. He just waited here. At the same time, he closed his eyes and opened Kaguya's heart eye. He was trying to increase the sensing range of Kaguya's heart eye. Yamato on the other side seemed to have discovered a clue at this time. Now he was lying in a hidden bush, his eyes staring straight ahead. In his sight, wisps of smoke emerged from a slightly hidden cave. At this time, Yamato frowned slightly. As someone who had been in the route, he had a very strong sense of detection. The moment he saw this cave, he knew that it was not simple here. But at this time, he felt something was wrong. If he went out on a mission, he could not expose his position by cooking like this under any circumstances. Looking at the smoke coming out of the cave and the strong smell of rice, Yamato became more and more confused. No matter, let's go take a look first. Just when Yamato made up his mind and was about to check inside the cave, his figure was instantly covered by a shadow, and then Yamato felt a cold breath. Without having time to think about it, he directly put his hands on the ground, exerted force, and quickly stood up. At the same time, as soon as his hands left the ground, he had already begun to form seals. Wood. Escape. Wooden spindle wall. A row of wood instantly rose from the ground, and then these wood formed a curved arch shield to cover Yamato. Next second with a bang, a huge black snake hit the shield. Click. Click. Under the black impact, the shield quickly shattered. Yamato, on the other hand, had already taken several steps back before this. After seeing his shield being so easily smashed by the black snake, Yamato's expression changed, and the speed of the seals on his hands increased again. Wooden escape. The 4-pillar prison technique. Yamato shouted, and then 4 huge wooden pillars rose from the ground. The next moment, these wooden pillars surrounded the black snake, forming a huge cage. Boom. Violent collisions were heard, and the huge wooden pillars continued to shake under the impact. It seems we have to withdraw. Let the captain handle such a guy. With this thought in his mind, Yamato was about to retreat. Too long spear. Suddenly there was a loud shout from behind him, and then a huge pillar of earth rose rapidly from the ground, directly sending Yamato flying out. Before he could react, the ninja of Konoha village. Looking at Yamato, who was knocked away, the man murmured boom. Yamato in the air suddenly turned into a burst of white smoke, and then a piece of wood fell to the ground. At this time, Yamato was standing on a big tree. He looked warily at the person who had just taken action. He saw that the person was wearing a mask like him, and was wearing an ordinary white robe. "Who are you?" Yamato asked in a deep voice. "Haha, why say such childish words?" The masked man sneered, then rushed towards Yamato with a kunai in hand. Click. Boom. At this time, there was a loud noise, and the black snake broke the wooden pillar and escaped. Yamato's expression changed instantly when he saw this. If someone was behind him, they would have seen that his back was already covered in blood, and his tattered vest was filled with dark red blood. The move just now did seriously hurt him. Yamato took out the kunai from his arms, and was ready to start the final game. Water. Escape. Water dragon whip. The masked man shouted, and then several water-like whips swept toward Yamato. Wood. Escape. Wooden spindle wall. Seeing this, Yamato reluctantly used a defensive ninjutsu again, and a row of curved wood stopped in front of him. Snapped. Snapped. The attack of the water whip was blocked, just for the next moment. Boom. The black snake's body hit the shield hard, and the huge impact caused the shield to shatter, and countless pieces of wood flew out in all directions. Boom. Without the protection of the shield, Black Snake's body directly hit Yamato, knocking him away, and then fell to the ground and fainted. Chapter 45 Orochimaru's followers. What does this guy have to do with Senju? He can actually use wood release ninjutsu. Looking at Yamato lying on the ground, the masked man reached out and took off the mask on Yamato's face, and a strange face appeared in front of him. What? An unexpected surprise. Then, he tied Yamato's hands and feet with ropes and took him into the cave. The big black snake crawled behind him. The masked man returned to the cave and then left Yamato aside with his hands and feet trapped. It's Akimichiyama slowly opened his eyes when he heard the noise and saw Yamato being thrown to the ground. After seeing the familiar Ranbu clothes on Yamato, his expression changed instantly. He knew that this should be the person sent by the village to look for them, but what surprised him was Yamato's age. At this time, Yamato's mask had been taken off, revealing his original face. You must know that Yamato is younger than Kakashi, and in the entire Ranbu, except for Naraku and Itachi, he may be the youngest. It's such a pity for such a genius. Akimichi Yumechi felt a pang of regret in his heart, but it was followed by anger. Looking at the masked man with angry eyes, Kyude-ocean said directly, "Zanxi Akeo, you will definitely pay the price." As for Akimichi Yumechi, Nakashita Kusa is the masked man, and he feels no pain or itching at all. Haha, the price. Zanxi Akeo sneered, and then took off his mask. He had black hair and slightly dark skin on his face. He looked like just an ordinary middle-aged man. Boom. Zanxi Akeo suddenly kicked Kyude-shin's strong body. How can people in a big family like you understand some things? A look of pain appeared on Kyude-ocean's face, but he still looked at the other party with hatred in his eyes. Zanxi Akeo is just a madman. Haha, Zanxi Akeo sneered and left here, carrying a bowl of rice and walking towards the depths of the cave, where a man was sitting on the ground with his back leaning on a big stone. It can be seen that this man's hands and feet are bound by chains, and there is a special magic flashing on his body. The arrival of Zanxi Akeo seemed to alarm the man. He raised his head slightly, revealing a pair of pale pupils by Byakugan. It is obvious that this person is from the Hyuga clan and has successfully opened the Byakugan. Captain Hinata, you are really in a mess right now. Looking at his leader in front of him, Nakaxia Kusa mocked facing his words. Hinata Huo's expression did not change at all. He just struggled to hold himself up and then took the bowl of rice from Nakashita Kusa's hand. Eat quickly. It's not time to let you die yet. After all, the special powers your family possesses can help Lord Orochimaru. Zanxi Akeo thought in his heart. At this moment, he seemed to sense something and disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he had already arrived at the entrance of the cave. What he didn't know was that just after he left, Hinata Huo smiled. At this time, his pupils were blue and white, and veins suddenly appeared on both sides of his eyes. Looks like we are going to. At the entrance of the cave, Zanxi Akeo breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the white snake had returned, and then a smile appeared on his face. Let me see what Orochimaru-sama's latest order is. Zanxi Akeo stepped in front of the white snake, and the white snake opened its mouth and spit out a scroll, as if it was sensing something. Looking at the scroll in his hand, Zanxi Akeo's figure couldn't stop trembling. In fact, Nakagoshita, Akimichi Yumechi, and Hinata Kazuya, the three of them were once in the same team, and Hinata Kazuo was the team leader. They were the team sent by Sande to find out the news originally. This mission to find out information was very easy for their team. After all, ninjas rarely appeared in the Kingdom of Frost. At most, they only occasionally had some minor frictions with people from the Kingdom of Thunder. As a big country, the Kingdom of Thunder will also regularly send ninjas here to inquire about information. Originally, they had always been in peace here, but suddenly one day, Nakagoshita suddenly took action against them. Hinata Fire and Akimichi Armor. Nakagoshita first poisoned Akimichi Yumechi and stunned him, and then used a special technique to control Hinata Fire. In this way, people who were originally stronger than Nakagoshita became his prisoners. Then it became like this. Zanxi Akeo seemed to be waiting for something. Although he controlled the two of them, he did not kill them. He even cooked a little food for them every day. In fact, what they didn't know was that the person Nakashita was waiting for now was Konoha's S-class rebel ninja, Orochimaru. One of the three ninjas. Nakashita, a child from an ordinary family, probably had the same experience as Orochimaru when his parents died when he was young, so he had an almost crazy obsession with Orochimaru. It was precisely because of this fascination that after he learned that Orochimaru had defected to Konoha, he regarded himself as a rebellious ninja of Konoha in his heart, and at the same time he did things that were consistent with his current status. That is to control the two people of Hinata and Fire. As for why the two were spared and not killed, the main reason was still Orochimaru. As Orochimaru's most loyal believer, Nakaxia Kusa knows a little more than others. He knows that Orochimaru's favorite thing is research. That's why he kept the two of them and planned to hand them over to Orochimaru for research. After all, Hinata Fire and Akimichi Yumechi both had special abilities, especially the former's Byakugan, which was quite famous in the entire ninja world. After Nakaxia Kusa successfully controlled the two of them, he contacted Orochimaru through some special methods, and the other party also gave him a simple order. Lord Orochimaru. Makashita Kusanage's eyes flashed with excitement after reading the scroll, as if something incredible was about to happen. So, they're all here, outside the cave. Naraku's shadow clone murmured that, although the shadow clone could not use Kaguya's heart eye, Naraku could feel several chaotic auras in the cave, just by relying on his own induction. One of them is relatively familiar. It's Yamato also in there? The shadow clone frowned slightly. He turned to look at the broken sawdust on the ground, confirming his suspicion. In that case, let me see who dares to bully my team members. The shadow clone murmured. The art of shadow clone. Boom. A burst of white smoke appeared. The next second, the smoke dissipated with a breeze, and a figure appeared on the field again. The two shadow clones looked at each other, and nodded to each other. Then the newly appeared shadow clone turned into a puff of smoke with a bang. Huh. Did you find it? Chapter 46 The Fierce Battle of Shadow Clones. Inside the cave, the sound of the shadow clone dissipating outside the door still attracted Zanxiakeo's attention. He put on the mask again, called to the black snake, and then one person and one snake walked out of the cave. Black Snake seemed very obedient to Zanxiakeo's orders. In fact, whether they are black snakes or white snakes, they are Orochimaru's psychic beasts, and they will only obey Nakashimaru's orders. After receiving Orochimaru's instructions, the connection between Nakagashira and Orochimaru is also through these two pythons. It's Anbu again. Makashita Kusa saw Naraku wearing a mask before he even walked out of the cave. With his strength, he couldn't tell that it was just a shadow clone. Although he was wearing a mask, from the height of Naraku Nakamoto, we could infer that his strength was not very strong. At most he was on par with the guy who used would release before. At this time, Zanxiakeo's slightly nervous mood relaxed a lot. Seeing Makashita Kusa walking out of the cave, the shadow clone didn't say anything, but the next moment his hands moved, and in the blink of an eye all the ninjutsu marks were completed. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. The shadow clone opened its mouth and spit out a huge fireball. Under the illumination of the fireball, the surrounding temperature began to rise rapidly. Boom. The hot fireball was like a cannonball, rushing towards Zanxiakeo. Seeing this, Zyukeo's pupils shrank. He didn't expect Naraku to strike so quickly. Earth. Escape. Earth formation wall. A wall of earth quickly rose from the ground, blocking the front of the fireball. Boom. The fireball hit the earth wall heavily. In just a moment, most of the earth wall rotted away, but it finally managed to block the fireball's attack. The loud noise raised a puff of smoke. Hiss. At this moment, the black snake next to Zanxiakeo suddenly moved, its thick tail sweeping through the air like a steel whip. A strong wind instantly formed and blew away the smoke, but Naraku's figure had long since disappeared. I don't know if you can withstand this. The shadow clone stood on a big tree not far away. After quickly forming seals with his hands, he let out a low drink. Fire. Dragon flame bullet. A fireball that was more powerful than before was ejected from his mouth. Under the scorching heat, crackling and crackling sounds were heard in the air. Zanxiakeo was slightly startled when he saw this fireball, and then without any hesitation, he quickly formed seals with his hands and shouted, "Water escape, water formation wall." A light blue water wall blocked the front of the firebomb, but the next moment the water wall was directly evaporated by the scorching heat and dissipated into a puff of smoke. Zanxiakeo's pupils shrank for a while, and then he ducked to one side without hesitation. Boom. The next moment, fire bombs landed heavily on the edge of the cave entrance. A violent sound came, and a large piece of the mountain sank directly into it. Oh, you actually dodged it. The shadow clone chuckled, then stood at the entrance of the cave. Kai. Suddenly, a thick steel whip tore through the air and struck him hard. Swish. The shadow clone used the teleportation technique to dodge the attack. At the same time, he waved one hand and struck the shuriken in the direction of the black snake. Oh, you are so ignorant. How could such an attack hurt it? At this time, a figure appeared on the other side of the grass in the middle, and he quietly stood behind the shadow clone. Too long spear. Shuriken shadow clone jutsu. 2. Low shouts came at the same time, and the ground under Naraku's feet began to shake violently. The next moment, a huge pointed pillar of earth drilled out of the ground. At the same time, there were dozens of shurikens fired at the black snake. Hiss. The Huge body of the black snake suddenly began to hover. He hid his head and abdomen inside the snake's body, leaving only the hardest part of its body exposed. Ding. 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 Dozens of shurikens landed on the snake's body at the same time, setting off a burst of dazzling sparks. The shadow clone here used the substitute technique to avoid the attack of the two-long gun. He turned to look at the black snake, feeling a little surprised in his heart. He had seen many of Orochimaru's psychic beasts, but he had never seen one with such a high IQ like the black snake in front of him. The shadow clone feels a bit tricky. If it was just Uzumaki, the battle should have been resolved by now. But now that the opponent has the assistance of Black Snake, it is indeed a bit stressful for him to be just a shadow clone. Forget it, we can only hold them back first, the shadow clone thought in his heart. Water escape, water dragon whip, but in the next moment, Uzumaki launched an offensive against him, and several long whips made of water whipped towards him. Wind escape, great breakthrough. Naraku opened his mouth and spit out 2 wind blades, cutting off all the water whips. The next moment, a huge black shadow suddenly attacked him. It was a black snake. At this time, it opened its big mouth, its sharp teeth flashed with a dazzling cold light, and it fiercely bit at Naraku. What a troublesome thing. The shadow clone formed a mark with one hand, and then with a bang, a burst of white smoke appeared. Naraku's body disappeared, and a broken piece of wood appeared on the spot. Wind escape, wind blade. The shadow clone shouted, and a huge wind blade appeared, and struck hard at the black snake. Laugh. The wind blade struck the black body, and a hideous wound appeared. Black blood slowly flowed out from the wound. Earth. Escape. Earth dragon bullet. At this moment, the ground suddenly shook, and a mud dragon emerged from the soil. Puff, puff, puff. Under the control of Uzumaki, mud bombs were ejected from the mouth of the mud dragon, and blasted towards the shadow clone. The shadow clone reacted very quickly. He kicked his feet on the ground and quickly moved backwards. At the same time, he was also forming seals on his hands quickly. Wind. Escape. Beast wave palm. Strong. Wind attribute chakra gathered in both hands, and the shadow clone waved one hand, and instantly several wind blades surged forward. Boom, boom. The wind blade collided with the mud bomb, and at the same time, the black snake's figure sprang out again. The shadow clone frowned. You really think I'm afraid of you? Then he formed a seal with his hands, and a pale golden light flashed behind the shadow clone. Vajra. Chain. A pale golden chain sprang out from behind. Compared with before, the chain looked a bit more solid. But after using the diamond chain, the shadow clone's chakra was almost exhausted. The pale golden chain shot out like a bolt of golden lightning, and arrived in front of the black snake in the blink of an eye. Faced with the sudden attack of the chain, Black Snake didn't pay attention at all, and slammed directly into the chain with a fierce force. The chain just moved slightly to dodge the black snake's attack, and then rushed to the black snake's body and began to spin. As the chain became tighter and tighter, the black snake gradually felt a trace of pressure. Its forward body gradually stopped, and the entire snake body began to circle. Chapter 47 Spiritual Confinement. Click, click. The pale golden chain and the black snake are intertwined with each other. Although the chain is broken from time to time due to the entanglement of the black snake, under the control of the shadow clone, it will soon be connected again. Although the chain cannot kill the black snake directly, it can still hold it for a while. Water escape, water cannonball. At this moment, Uzumaki voice sounded again, and he sprayed a huge water ball from his mouth. The next moment, the water ball rushed towards the shadow clone like a cannonball. It's really easy to sneak in every opportunity. The shadow clone shook his head slightly. Just when he was about to make a move, a white shadow suddenly sprang out. The white shadow moved extremely fast and arrived in front of the shadow clone in the blink of an eye. It was a white snake. The shadow clone's pupils shrank, and he saw the white shadow clearly. Snake opened its mouth, a black fang flashing with cold light, and then it bit the shadow clone's shoulder. It's over. No one can withstand the poison of white phosphorus. Uzumaki breathed a sigh of relief after seeing this scene. White Scales was the name he gave White Snake. He had tried it before, and even a Jounin would lose his fighting ability in a few seconds. The strength of the shadow clone made him feel the pressure. It is no exaggeration to say that, if it were not for the help of Black Snake, He might have been defeated long ago. But the next moment, he couldn't be happy anymore. With a bang, the body bitten by the white scales suddenly turned into a cloud of smoke, and at the same time, the chains binding the black snake disappeared together. Is this a shadow clone? Looking at the white smoke blown away by the wind, Zanxiakeo was stunned. If just a shadow clone has such strength, what if it is him? Thinking of this, Zanxiakeo immediately stopped hesitating, and turned around, and walked towards the cave. He wanted to quickly deal with the few people in the cave, and then leave here. Hiss. Black Snake followed him in confusion, and walked towards the cave together. The corpse is also helpful to Orochimaru-sama, right? After returning to the cave, Nakagoshita took the lead with a kunai, and walked towards the restrained Akimichi Yumechi, with a stern look in his eyes. He raised the kunai in his hand, and wiped it on Akimichi Yumechi's neck. Kyudeoshin just looked at him indifferently. The anger in his eyes was gone, and there was just a look of reminiscence. Maybe he knew that he was about to die, so he slowly closed his eyes. The next moment, the imagined pain did not come. As soon as Kyudeoshin opened his eyes, he saw Nakagoshita trembling and looking towards the entrance of the cave. As for the kunai in his hand, it had already fallen to the ground. Fortunately, I caught up. Naraku breathed a sigh of relief at the entrance of the cave point. After receiving the first summons from the shadow clone, he began to rush here with all his strength. Fortunately, he came just in time. Who are you? Zanxiakeo asked while steadying his body, while making a few gestures with his hands behind his back. Haha, put away your little thoughts. The person standing in front of you is not the shadow clone. Naraku chuckled. They should be the ones you are looking for. As soon as Naraku finished speaking, two figures, one big and one small, one black and one white, were pulled over. They were the white snake and black snake just now. The reason for pulling was because they were all bound by a golden chain at this time. Seeing this, Zanxiakeo's body trembled again. He was able to control both the black and white snakes in an instant. Naraku's strength was simply not something he could compete with. Sure enough, Tenzo is here too. Looking at Yamato who fainted on the ground, Naraku couldn't help but shake his head slightly. Yamato still had many shortcomings in terms of strength and experience. Naraku walked forward slowly. He was ready to kill this guy quickly. In this case, their mission would be over. Water. Escape. Water Dragon Whip. Zanxiakeo shouted low, and swung water whips towards Naraku. I don't know what to say. Naraku snorted coldly. The wind attribute chakra condensed in his hand, and then he waved with one hand. Wind escape. Beast wave palm. Several wind blades defeated the water whip, and at the same time, the figure of Zanxiakeo was blown backwards. Naraku then walked up to Akimichi Sanachi, took out a kunai, and prepared to cut the ropes tied to him. You are? Akimichi asked tentatively. In response, Naraku just glanced at him and said nothing. There is a rule in Anbu that no personnel is allowed to take the initiative to reveal their identity when performing tasks. Even if they are recognized by others, they cannot admit it. Seeing that Naraku remained silent, Akimichi Yumechi did not continue to ask further questions, but the next moment, his pupils shrank, and he suddenly said, "Be careful." At this time, Zanxiakeo suddenly appeared at Naraku's feet, and reached out to hold his feet. Haha, it's too late. Zanxiakeo sneered. Oh, you think you can do nothing about me? Naraku said at this time. His tone was calm, and without any waves. Even now, he still doesn't take Chunin seriously. In his opinion, the opponent's own strength is no different from that of a normal Chunin point. Although Zanxiakeo pinched his feet, Naraku had countless ways to break free at any time, but he did not do that. He was a little curious about what Zanxiakeo wanted to do. You're really arrogant, but this is just what I want, Nakaxiakeo thought to himself. Sealing the spirit, suddenly, he shouted, and then black spells appeared on his hands. The next moment, these spells crawled onto Naraku's legs. This is, Naraku frowned slightly, feeling a sense of familiarity in this technique. Haha, arrogance often makes people pay an irreparable price. Nakashi Takusa's figure slowly emerged from the ground. After watching the black technique spread to Naraku's entire body, he couldn't help but smile under the mask. No, it's this move again, Kyudeoshin said secretly when he saw this. At this time, the ropes trapping his legs had been cut off by Naraku. He stood up unsteadily and was about to launch a move towards Zanxiakeo attack. You'd better lie down on the ground. Upon seeing this, Nakaxiakusa looked at him with disdain in his eyes, quickly formed several marks on his hand, and prepared to use ninjutsu to attack him. Even though Akimichi Yumechi's hands were still tied, Nakaxiakusa still didn't dare to fight in close combat with his opponent. His physical skills were far inferior to Akimichi Yumechi's. Akimichi Yumechi also saw his movements, and without hesitation he began to grit his teeth and accumulate strength. Haha, what an interesting idea. At this moment, Naraku suddenly spoke, and then he waved one hand and directly knocked the middle grass away. Wind attribute chakra gathered in his right hand, and then Naraku used his palm as a knife to cut the rope that bound Akimichi Yumechi's upper body. Chapter 48 Return to the village. How? In the cave, Zanxiakeo, who was knocked out, stood up unsteadily and looked at Naraku in disbelief. Sure enough, ignorance is the most terrifying thing, Naraku thought in his heart. As for the spirit sealing technique Nakaxiakusa used just now, it is just a simple sealing technique that can seal chakra. For Naraku, this level of sealing technique is on the same level as D-level ninjutsu. He himself even masters a higher level sealing technique of the same type, which can not only seal chakra, but also bind the body. Otherwise, if you just seal chakra, the effect against some ninjas who are good at physical skills will not be very obvious. After cutting off all the ropes on Akimichi Yumechi, Naraku turned his head and looked aside. There was a fainted Yamato, and the same hand knife cut off the rope on his body, but when he saw the hideous wounds on Yamato's back, Naraku frowned. What a troublesome guy. As for Akimichi Sanachi, he rushed towards the inside of the cave the moment he gained freedom. Although Shimakusa wanted to stop this, he was blocked by Naraku. Looking at Nakaxiakusa in front of him, Naraku was wondering whether to kill or keep him. Now, he was sure that the other party must have some kind of relationship with Orochimaru. In fact, Naraku doesn't want to take the initiative to provoke Orochimaru. After all, his strength is still very weak. Boy, you'd better not mess around. Lord Orochimaru will be here soon. If he finds out what you did to me, he won't let you go, knowing that he can't escape on his own. In trouble, Nakagashi took out Orochimaru's name. It's Naraku was slightly startled when he heard this, but then he looked disdainful. Maybe this person really has something to do with Orochimaru, but if you want to say that Orochimaru will avenge you, that's pure nonsense. Naraku knows better than anyone what kind of person Orochimaru is, a firm solipsist. Naraku's words made Naraku feel very funny, and then he made a decision in his mind. What had something to do with Orochimaru? Naraku looked at Nakaxiakusa. The moment the two people's eyes met, his originally dark eyes instantly changed into scarlet eyes that exuded a mysterious aura. The next moment, Zanxiakeo's eyes were distracted, as if he had lost consciousness. Naraku held a kunai and disappeared in an instant. When he appeared, he was already in front of Zanxiakeo, and then directly touched his neck with kunai. With a bang, Zanxiakeo's body fell to the ground. Naraku closed his eyes, and when he opened them, his eyes had returned to normal. At this time, Kyudeoshin helped someone walk out of the cave. After the two of them saw Zanxiakeo lying on the ground, their eyes changed, but it only lasted for a moment, and they returned to normal the next moment. He's from the Hyuga clan. After seeing Hinata's pale eyes, Naraku recognized his identity. After all, in the entire ninja world, only people from the Hyuga clan would look at others with a blank stare. After a brief negotiation between the three of them, Naraku roughly understood what happened. He looked at the grass on the ground with complicated eyes. In this world, who can tell clearly what is right and wrong? Right and wrong. After sealing Zanxiakeo's body with a scroll, Naraku turned his head and looked at the two snakes controlled by the diamond chains. First came the black snake. Naraku hesitated for a moment, then controlled the chain, and began to increase the strength. The already restrained black snake instantly turned into a puff of smoke, and dissipated under this force. As for the remaining white snake, Naraku sealed it in the scroll, because this white snake was somewhat special. It could change the size of its body to a certain extent, which was somewhat similar to the secret technique of the Akimichi clan. Naraku was a little curious about this, and decided to study it when he had time. As for whether he can offend Orochimaru, he no longer considers this issue at this time. Even if he is really resented by Orochimaru, it is not a bad thing. After all, there is a shadow level strongman spurring him at any time, so he only then will the strength rise faster. Naraku lifted Yamato up from the ground, and then the four of them left here together. Zanxiakeo's body was put away by Naraku with a scroll. The four of them first came to Shuan Town to rest for a day. After all, except for Naraku, the other people were not in very good condition. Oh, that guy in the middle has really failed. The pale golden pupil slowly opened, and Orochimaru stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. However, we actually met Uzumaki Naraku, Orochimaru said with a surprised expression on his face. Forget it, these don't matter to me now, he thought to himself. He's just a member of the Hyuga branch. Even the real Byakugan can't compare to those eyes. As if he thought of something, Orochimaru's eyes were full of excitement at this time. The next day, the four of them, Naraku, left Frost Town together and rushed towards the country of Fire. Originally, Naraku didn't plan to go with them. After all, his and Yamato's mission was just to rescue them. However, considering that Hinata and Fire were still very weak, if something unexpected happened on the way back, it would be more of a loss than the gain. So Naraku decided to return to the village with them. Because Hinata, Huo and others were not in very good condition, they did not go back that fast. It took them 4 days to return to the village. But luckily, this time because Yamato was here, they could basically have a good rest at night. Hokage's office. Although he was extremely reluctant, Naraku reported the mission in person this time. Although he also wanted Yamato to do this for him, he fainted early this time and had no choice but to do it himself. He first recorded the general content of the mission on the scroll and handed the scroll to the third generation along with the scroll containing the sealed body of Shikusa. There are actually traces of Orochimaru. Could it be that Nakaxi-Akusa's rebellion has something to do with Orochimaru? Looking at the content recorded on the scroll, Sandai said in a deep voice, "Yes, Lord Hokage. According to Nakashi-Akusa himself, he and Orochimaru have known each other for many years and have always been in close contact. So when he learned that Orochimaru became a rebel ninja, he also rebelled with him." Hinata Fire took a step forward and said. Naraku felt a little speechless about this. He felt that, although this middle-class grassroots man was not very strong, he was quite thick-skinned. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Hatake Swordsmanship. How could a person of Orochimaru's level have a close connection with a person whose strength could not even reach that of a Jonin? Not to mention Naraku. Even Sandai felt it was a bit nonsense. He knew very well what kind of character his disciples were, and Nakaxi-Akusa might just be a believer with a paranoid personality. After reporting the mission, Naraku turned around and left. Naraku and Tenzo stay. Hinata Hui, you go back and rest. Came the hoarse voice of the third generation. Well, there won't be another mission. Naraku was slightly startled. Sure enough, Sandai's next words confirmed his suspicion. There have been some abnormalities at the border of the Land of Fire recently. You two go and assist the guards there to investigate. Naraku was about to refuse. Yes, Hokage-sama. Yamato's voice came over. Naraku looked at him speechlessly, but since Yamato had agreed, he couldn't help but accept the task. Naraku finally understood Kakashi's situation at that time. Fortunately, for this mission, they can start again tomorrow, which still gives them a day's rest. Returning to the hospital again, as usual, Naraku first took a look at Kushina, and then returned to his room. As for the toad inflammation, Naraku let it go back to Myomu Mountain to rest, and prepared to channel it early tomorrow morning. Back in the room, Naraku went to wash up first, and then prepared to lie on the bed and catch up on his sleep. A secluded location in the back mountains of Konoha. Wearing a black mask and long silver hair, it was Kakashi who had taken a long leave. At this time, he held a shabby looking book in his hand. There were some small figures holding weapons on the book, and there seemed to be some special human acupuncture points. Kakashi sat here like this all day, until after the sun set. He slowly closed the book. At this time, you can see the 4 characters Hatake swordsmanship printed on the cover of the book. Hatake sword technique is a special type of ninjutsu. Kakashi's father, Hatake Tsukumo, relied on this powerful ninjutsu to become more powerful than the 3 ninjas. Konoha White Fang. In fact, regarding Hatake swordsmanship, Kakashi also practiced with his father for a period of time when he was a child. The reason why he became a ninja at such a young age has something to do with his training at that time. But then White Fang died early, and he transplanted Obito Sharingan. With no one to teach him, and chakra never being enough, Kakashi never touched Hatake Jutsu again. But now that the Sharingan can be temporarily sealed, and the chakra is sufficient, how can he give up the inheritance of the Hatake family? Kakashi picked up the silver sword next to him, and started practicing sword skills. However, because he had not touched sword skills for a long time, his movements were a bit unfamiliar at first, but as time slowly passed, his movements became more and more skillful. Although it was just some simple chopping movements, Kakashi was still very serious, one knife after another, and he did not stop until all his clothes were soaked with sweat. Night fell, and in the boundless darkness, only the silver white blades kept flashing. It wasn't until late at night that he stopped. The sudden relaxation of his body made him feel severe pain in an instant, and he almost fell to the ground. Haha, Kakashi gasped. Although he was very tired physically, he was extremely happy at this moment, and his only exposed right eye was full of excitement. Father, after a brief rest, Kakashi walked into a simple wooden house. At this time, a broken white short blade shone coldly on the table in the wooden house. The ninja tool White Fang is a special chakra short blade. This was the sword that Kakashi's father, White Fang of Konoha, used to carry. After White Fang died, the knife fell into Kakashi's hands, but he broke it during a mission. Looking at the broken white teeth, Kakashi's eyes revealed a hint of reminiscence, but he soon became firm. Since it's broken, let's forge it again, Kakashi murmured. Looks like I'm going to visit the craftsman country, Kakashi thought in his mind. Now that he has decided to start practicing swordsmanship again, a good weapon is essential. So Kakashi thought of the craftsman country, which is famous for its forging. His father's White Fang blade was forged in the land of craftsmen. Konoha village. Naraku, who had slept late at night, suddenly opened his eyes, and the next moment he stood up and opened the door. It's really you, Shisu. Naraku already had a guess in his mind after seeing the crow flying by in the distance. Then he left a few shadow clones behind and disappeared here in a flashpoint in a secluded forest, wearing a dark turtleneck top, a triangular protective gear, and a small sword on his back. Naraku looked at Zisu in front of him and said with some confusion, Zisu, what do you want from me? It's not to blame Naraku for being confused, it's because his relationship with Shisu is not deep to begin with, and coupled with Shisu's multiple identities, it's better for Naraku to have less contact with him at this stage. Naraku, how are you? There have been so many tasks recently, are you feeling uncomfortable? Shisu said with a smile. Naraku shook his head slightly when he heard this, but didn't say much. Seeing Naraku like this, Shisu smiled helplessly, and he was about to say something. Uzumaki Naraku, a slightly aged voice sounded from behind. When Naraku heard this voice, his alarm went off instantly. He quickly turned around, looked behind him, and took a step back. What caught his eye was a man with half of his body wrapped in white bandages. However, when Naraku saw this person, he secretly said something bad in his heart. He did not expect that Danzo would come to see him in person. He should have thought of it a long time ago. The current Shizu was obviously transferred to the root by the third generation. Danzo-sama, it's so late, why do you come to see me in person? As he spoke, Naraku directly opened Kaguya's mind. Nearby, he felt several auras, and he knew that those were the root members hiding in the dark. Naraku looked at Danzo in front of him carefully. If the other party made any changes, he would definitely react immediately. However, Naraku feels that Danzo is not that stupid. He is still in Konoha, and his identity is the younger brother of the fourth Hokage. if things get too ugly, not to mention Danzo, even the third generation will not end well. Uzumaki Naraku, I heard that you recently joined Hiruzen Zanbu. It's not suitable for you there. Come to the roots. Only in the roots can you do everything you want to do. Danzo said. Danzo had long wanted to study the special physique of the Uzumaki clan. Chapter 50. My fourth generation brother. Do you dare to touch him? Join the roots. Listening to Danzo's nonsense, Naraku was completely dismissive. Naraku was very clear about Danzo's thoughts, and he was just plotting to improve his own Uzumaki clan's physique. Originally, Danzo had this idea when he was very young, but it was just because of Minato's relationship that he failed to succeed. After Minato's death, Jiraiya stayed in the village for another 2 years, and Danzo had no chance to make a move. Unexpectedly, Jiraiya had just left the village for a while, and he started making various small moves. Join the roots. Okay, Naraku said to Danzo against his will, but I'm still a member of the Anbu after all. This matter still needs the approval of Hokage-sama. Originally, Danzo was a little happy when he heard it, but now he can't laugh anymore. Uzumaki Naraku, as long as you agree to join the roots, I will naturally tell Hiruzen, Danzo said in a cold tone. Oh, Lord Danzo, your tone sounds like you are threatening me. If I don't agree, it won't be enough, right? Naraku smiled coldly, thinking in his mind how to solve this matter. Obviously, now is not the time to fall out with the other party. If it was just him, Naraku might have been the rebellious ninja of Konoha Point, but now both Naruto and Kushina are still in the village, especially Naruto. One of them is firmly controlled by the third generation in the name of raising him, and the other is in a coma point at this stage. Naraku still has to stay in Konoha. Threat. Haha, what a joke. I just like your talent, and don't want you to be buried in Anbu. Well, then I have to thank Danzo-sama for considering me. The two of them continued to argue. At this time, Shisu, who was standing behind Naraku, seemed to sense something, and his brows trembled twice unnoticeably. The clan of the Uchiha clan. Although Uchiha has always been ostracized in the village, as their clan leader, Uchiha Fugaku's family still lives in a very luxurious place. At this time, Fugaku, who had just finished a family meeting, returned home. Suddenly he turned his head and looked aside. There were only a few hazy moonlight in the dark night sky. Fugaku shook his head slightly, then stepped into the house. Itachi, Shisu, Uzumaki Naraku, Minato, is it really possible for Uchiha to be saved? The clan of the Sarutobi clan, because the clan leader is the most powerful person in Konoha. The Sarutobi clan's clan is also the most geographically located in Konoha village, and it looks no worse than the bloodstained clans like Uchiha Point. Sunday, who had finished his day's work, had just finished washing, and was lying on the bed, not knowing what he was thinking about. The third generation has been having some headaches recently. First, Orochimaru's defection caused the village to lose a top combat force, and then Kakashi took a long leave for no reason, causing the Anbu's tasks to begin to backlog again. Not to mention that Danzo has been making more and more small moves recently. Although he sent Shisu to sneak into the route, the third generation still cannot feel at ease. After all, he is a member of the Uchiha clan. Sunday thought in his heart. Boom. Boom. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Lord Patriarch, came the voice of the butler Sarutobi King, who, after hearing the sound, Sunday stood up from the bed without any hesitation, wearing a nightgown, and opened the door. Wearing a white mask and carrying a short sword on his back, he was about the same height as Naraku now. After the third generation signaled the butler to step back, he said, Itachi, what's wrong at this late hour? Is there any news from Shisu? Uchiha. Itachi, the only person in the entire Anbu who is close to Naraku's age. Yes, Hokage-sama. Itachi knelt down and handed a scroll to the third generation. After reading the content on the scroll, the third generation's face suddenly changed, and he walked directly out of the room. Call all the members of the second, third, and fourth teams, and come with me. Yes. This night was destined to be restless. Many Anbu members who had rested without missions were awakened again to participate in an emergency mission led by the third generation himself, Uzumaki Naraku. Don't challenge my patience again, or you will definitely pay the price, Danzo said with a murderous tone. At this time, he also saw that Naraku was arguing with him. Oh, the price. What price? Danzo-sama, have you forgotten my identity? Do you dare to touch the brother of the fourth Hokage? After saying that, Naraku looked at him with a half smile. Danzo was slightly startled when he heard this, and the surrounding area became quiet. Unlike the third generation, the fourth generation's reputation in Konoha village has reached a peak. In this regard, only the first generation who founded Konoha village can compare with him. Although the members of the roots carry out Danzo's orders unconditionally, they would still hesitate if they were allowed to take action against the fourth generation's younger brother. In fact, from here we can also see the failure of the third generation as a Hokage, the Yondame's younger brother. Haha, Danzo sneered in his heart. It is precisely because you are the younger brother of the fourth generation that I want to recruit you to the root. You also know that Konoha is now riddled with holes and no longer has the strength to intimidate other ninja villages, so come to roots. As long as you are willing to help me, we can definitely lead the village to greater heights. Help you. Danzo-sama is joking. I, Naraku Uzumaki, only obey the orders of the Hokage and the village, Naraku said in a cold tone. It's really here. Naraku, who opened Kaguya's inner eye, vaguely felt a few familiar auras approaching here quickly. Although he couldn't tell who it was because of the distance, Naraku already had the answer in his mind. The Hokage ordered that Hiruzen guy is not a qualified Hokage at all. If it weren't for him, how could the village develop into what it is today? Danzo said angrily. At this moment, a man in black clothes and a mask suddenly stood next to Danzo, and then whispered a few words to him. Danzo's expression changed upon hearing this. Naraku guessed that the third generation was coming soon, and some of them got the news. Naraku's guess was not wrong. Danzo stretched out his right hand and waved it slightly backwards. He was telling everyone at the base to retreat quickly. Then, except for Shizu, everyone else hidden in the roots evacuated in an instant. Aha, aha, aha. At this moment, Sandai came here with more than a dozen and boo. Until he saw Naraku still standing here, Sandai breathed a sigh of relief. Naraku sneered inwardly at this. He didn't think that Sandai did this because he cared about himself. He knew that the third generation was just showing off at best, and the reason why he rushed over to rescue him was just because he didn't want Danzo to increase his power. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.